Mass Effect is a franchise that needs no introduction, so it won't get an introduction. Look, if you haven't played this series yet, then I implore you to hold this video off until you complete it, because 1, spoilers, obviously. Seriously, I'm going to show a major character getting popped in like 3 seconds, so I suggest you click off this video until you have played the game. 3, 2, 1, bang, haha, bye bye Ashley. And 2, it is still one of the most influential, compelling, and overall enjoyable experiences I have ever had whilst playing a video game, regardless of the criticisms that I will address in this video. The world building, characters, lore, writing, and setting of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, the Citadel DLC, are some of the richest that you can find on the market. I don't want anybody to be swayed away from playing these games purely because I wanted to share my perspective on the execution of the product. To say that Mass Effect is nothing short of a masterpiece would not be considered an exaggeration in the slightest. However, it would be more accurate to suggest that Mass Effect falls just short of a masterpiece because, well, yeah, the ending. It's bad. It's quite disheartening to even consider a second playthrough of the series when you know that this, and this all eventually lead to this. A derivative, undercooked mess of an ending that completely disregards the franchise's themes, characters, and even the agency of the player, all because BioWare was so impressed that they were able to create a model of a child that they decided to base an entire game around it. And the most excruciating part of the whole ordeal? It only gets worse the more you think about it. When you realize that this once beloved franchise wasn't tragically undercut by corporate meddling or strict deadlines diminishing the creative freedom of the developers, but that the trilogy seemingly was set to end like this for some time. The almost instant scrambling done by BioWare to bring some sort of coherence to this ending is enough evidence to determine that the conclusion that the studio had formulated and the conclusion that the franchise had in mind were remarkably distant. It gets to the point where you simply have to ask, where did it all go wrong? Some blame Mass Effect 3 and say that the catastrophic attempt to bring a grandiose yet satisfying conclusion led to a story that was poorly paced, poorly written, and at times just plain insulting. Others blame Mass Effect 2 and say that the game diverging from the threat that was established in the previous title resulted in the final installment having to pick up the slack and do too much with too little of a time frame. However, I believe in a third, more sinister option. That the biggest problem with Mass Effect was present since the very beginning, to the point where I could say that the franchise was almost doomed from the start, for I am of the belief that
all fact, no fiction, I live with addiction, it gets so relatable, you think the song is about you, don't you? Wanna track no friction, expand my diction, feel relatable, you think the song is about you, don't you?
To start this off, I will be giving a brief summary of the first Mass Effect game. And when I say brief, I mean brief. I will only mention information that is relevant to my points later in the video. I don't want to be like one of those video essayists who make 4-hour videos explaining the plot to you. You've played the damn game. Use your brain cells for once, you bum. You are Commander Shepard, a human who escaped from underworld gangs on Earth or Batarian pirates on Mindor or abandonment issues in space in order to enlist in the Systems Alliance military, where alongside being frontline on the Skillian Blitz, they became notable for surviving a Thrasher-Maw attack on Akuz or earning the Alliance's highest honor during the attack on Elysium or slaughtering dozens of Batarians on Torfan. Regardless, Shepard is a bit of a nutjob, and that is exactly why Nihilus Krieg nominated him as a potential Spectre. As a part of Shepard's initiation, Nihilus occupies the commander on a routine shakedown mission on Eden Prime in order to recover a Prothean beacon that is chock full of information. However, everything goes south when a giant mind flayer head descends from the sky, a collection of castaway robots known as the Guests starts skewering the townsfolk, and fellow Spectre Serenitarius kills Nihilus in cold blood. With his promotion in jeopardy, Shepard ventures on towards the Prothean beacon with his trusty companions comprised of Kaidan Alenko, a biotic who had everything that is interesting about him already happened before the events of the game, Ashley Williams, an Alliance gunman with the most co-worker-ass takes in history, and the best character in the entire franchise, Dick Leroy Jenkins. I want to take a moment to really appreciate the amount of care and detail that BioWare put towards Dick Leroy Jenkins in order to make him such a compelling and complex character that still resonates with audiences today. So many of Mass Effect's greatest and most memorable moments can be connected back to Dick Leroy Jenkins and his iconic catchphrase, "I have a tiny dick and even smaller balls. The balls are above the dick. Also, the dick stinks and I hate it. The balls do not smell, but my penis stinks. My balls are low in sperm. I have to sit down to pee. Garments." It also goes without mentioning the, at the time, groundbreaking LGBTQ representation with his eventual romance with Commander Shepard, giving players the opportunity to well and truly Dick Leroy Jenkins. He was one of the few characters who were not diminished by the writing of Mass Effect 3, as his heart-wrenching goodbye before sacrificing himself to 14,000 Geth recon drones in order to get Shepard to the Crucible brought many a tear to players' eyes, including mine. May he rest in peace. Garments. After making their way through legions of Geth and sorting the peace along the way, Shepard and his merry bunch make their way to the Prothean beacon. Shepard comes too close to the beacon and gets zip-bombed with 22 terabytes of Tali-Zora Feat Rule 34, which promptly incapacitated him. He awakens on the Normandy, where he interacts with Dr. Chocolates, Captain Anderson, and Joker before touching down on the Citadel to report his findings. In the Citadel, Shepard and Anderson, alongside Ambassador Udina, alert the Council of the attack on Eden Prime, which prompts the Council to hit up Saren, who denies any involvement. Anderson mentions the visions that Shepard witnessed from interacting with the beacon, but the Council dismisses this because, of course they would, it's a vision inside of Shepard's mind. It's at this point when Shepard figures that Saren's status as a Spectre practically makes him impossible to confront, so Shepard decides that it is instead best to ditch the Council and find leads in some other way. This in turn leads Shepard to Turian C-Sect officer Garrus Vakarian, who helps point Shepard to Krogan mercenary Rex, who helps point Shepard to Quarian technician Tali-Zora Naraya, who possesses incriminating evidence against Saren being behind the Eden Prime attacks, and proceeds to lore dump about how the Geth haven't travelled past the Perseus Veil in nearly 300 years, and how they worship mysterious beings known as the Reapers, who supposedly wiped out the Prothean race 50,000 years ago. Anderson and Udina alert the Council of Saren's treachery, and they finally strip Saren of his Spectre status. Shepard barters with the Council to grant him the status of Spectre so that the Citadel can investigate Saren and the Geth without taking any measures that may result in a war with the Terminus systems, a collection of races that are independent from those represented in the Council. The Council shockingly agree, and with the snap of their fingers, Commander Barnaby Shepard is the first ever human Spectre. Yeah, I made his first name Barnaby. He grabs his crew, he grabs the Normandy, and Shepard is off to explore the galaxy. You still with me on this one? Don't worry, mate, we'll be off the road in a second. Firstly, Shepard travels to Therum, where he finds a Sari archaeologist of questionable age, Liara Tassoni, and together they conclude that the Reapers are indeed real and did not just wipe out the Protheans, but every other advanced civilization that came before them. Ooh. Or maybe Shepard instead travels to Feros to fend off a Geth attack at Zoo's Hope, where he discovers the existence of a prehistoric lifeform known as the Thorian, which has telepathically taken over the minds of the residents of Zoo's Hope, and after sending it to the fiery depths of hell where it belongs, this chick that I forgot the name of pops up and provides Shepard with a cipher to help clear up his vision, while also informing him that Saren attempted to kill the Thorian to prevent Shepard from obtaining the cipher. Or perhaps Shepard makes a stop at Noveria to put a stop to Matriarch Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Or maybe Shepard makes a stop at Noveria to put a stop to Matriarch Benezia, Liara's mother and Saren's right-hand woman, who was sent to recover the location of a lost mass relay from a captured queen of a species of giant insects known as the Rachni, who were eradicated by the Krogan 2,000 years ago, who Shepard also sent to the fiery depths of hell where it belongs. Or maybe all three, I don't know and I don't care. Either way, once you complete 2 of the 3 missions, Shepard gets a call from the Council who asks him to suss out a Solarian recon team on Vermile that the Council have received radio silence from. Once Shepard plows through waves of Geth in his trusty 1996 Suzuki Vitara X90, he relays with the Solarians, who are holed up in a camp outside Saren's base. Their leader, General Kirahi, informs Shepard that Saren has apparently found a cure for the genophage, a biological weapon created by the Solarians in order to prevent rapidly increasing Krogan birth rates, which in turn have virtually doomed the Krogan for their foreseeable future. It appears that with this cure, Saren can breed an army of Krogan that he will use to take over the galaxy. It turns out that Rex actually doesn't want to damn his entire race to extinction, and that's a big no-no, so Ashley dumps her thermal clip into him and they get on their way. Once Shepard sneaks into the base, he discovers that Saren did not have a cure for the genophage and had been lying in order to enlist Krogan mercenaries. He fights some Solarian geekers and executes this Asari, which you may think sounds cruel, but trust me, it is still better treatment than the later games give her. The Normandy crew travels up to Saren's lab, where they find another Prothean beacon, which this time emits Shepard's brain with the ruins of Ilos. After Shepard finishes piercing his pants, he walks up to the overhead catwalk where he encounters a control panel. However, once Shepard approaches the panel, he is presented with something else entirely. Something otherworldly. And this right here is where we stop the ride. For this moment right here is the moment that ruined Mass Effect. Strong climb, I know. And I intend to elaborate, but first I want to ask a question. Who exactly is Saren? Saren Atarius is a character that does not receive much attention or even consideration from many who have played Mass Effect, and for good reason. He doesn't possess the effortless screen presence of the Elusive Man or the cringiness of Kai Lang that makes you want to put your head through every monitor in your house. But I feel as though he does play a more integral role to the importance of Mass Effect's plot than initially perceived. Going by the information that has been presented up to this part in the game, we know that Saren was, of course, a Spectre. He was cunning, calculating, and possessed a ruthless edge that other Spectres lacked, almost to the degree that his actions were considered barbaric. Despite this, Saren was revered by the Council for his effectiveness, so much so that the ambassadors did not initially believe the reports of Saren attacking the Prothean dig site at Eden Prime, and he inducted the aforementioned Nihilist Krieg as a Spectre based on his accomplishments in the Turian military. However, Saren has been vocal about his displeasure regarding the rapid expansion of human colonies and political power within the Citadel. His brutal tactics have also drawn the ire of Captain David Anderson, who informed Shepard that Saren set him up whilst on a mission 30 years ago. Apparently this mission is chronicled in this prequel novel written by the lead writer of Mass Effect himself, Drew Karpyshyn. I'm not going to go into these books because they're not really relevant to this video and, well, I haven't read them. All I know is that the main character is autistic and all the books are pretty good except for the fourth, which people refuse to even acknowledge. Kinda like Mass Effect. The point that I'm trying to get across is that Saren, even with the limited screen time so far, is still characterized in a manner that is both effective and able to justify his existence up to this point in the game. He serves as a sort of juxtaposition of Commander Shepard himself, as Shepard is portrayed as either a beacon or a martyr for humanity depending on the perspectives of the two major human factions in the galaxy, along with the morality of Shepard's actions depicted by the Paragon Renegade system throughout the series. Well, maybe the first two games, this system becomes a glorified QuickTime event by the time ME3 rolls around. Therefore, it makes sense for Shepard's foil in the first installment of the series to be a ruthless, lawless alien Spectre who calls into question the authenticity of the human race and is willing to retain galactic stability at all costs, even if it comes at the expense of one species in particular. Alas, none of this comes to fruition as... No, that's underselling it. The truth is that the past 2 minutes of exposition I gave you ended up being completely irrelevant because Saren is not the villain of Mass Effect 1. This is. Yeah, it turns out that the ship that Saren and Benezia have been riding on throughout the whole game wasn't just any ordinary ship. It wasn't even a ship at all. It was a Reaper, with this Reaper in particular being named Sovereign. If you've played the game before, you would be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, Bud Myth. Although I do find this video incredibly entertaining and I have clicked the like button in addition to the subscribe button and the ensuing bell, oh my God, shut the fuck up! I couldn't help but notice that you have left out one crucial detail when it comes to the Reapers. Well, dear viewer, you would be correct because I have yet to mention the existence of the primary weapon of the Reapers, indoctrination. And for good reason. Oh, I can see more. Okay, well, that's not exactly true. What I want to say is... Oh, I can see more. The big Reaper, nigga. Because after all, indoctrination and brainwashing aren't really the same thing, are they? Indoctrination is when you are led to believe that adopting a certain attitude or behavior regarding a subject is the most beneficial towards yourself and others, while brainwashing is the act of having a certain mindset being forcibly imprinted upon you by an external force. Looking at the characters of Mass Effect who go on to become indoctrinated, their behavior seems to have more in common with the latter rather than the former. It may seem as though I'm coming off as pedantic by going, actually, on a game from 18 years ago. But getting such a major component of your story factually incorrect is not promising. It is at this point in the video where I would discuss the chronology of mind control in films and video games, but I can't find any research on the history of brainwashing in media because once I Google it, I just find a bunch of articles getting mad at wokeness and Sweet Baby Ray's or something. I don't want to make this a political video because Mass Effect is not a political game and I am an Aussie, so we don't really participate in the glorified sporting event that Americans call politics. You might think that I was merely jesting when I said that Mass Effect wasn't political, but can you really call it political? I mean, the games shy away from the economic and political state of the galaxy whenever possible to make way for the more important stuff, like murking Batarian pirates and tipping Asari strippers. The most potent political messages that the Mass Effect series provides you are 1. Robots are human, but also less than human, because if you had to exterminate all robots in the galaxy in order to destroy the Reapers, then you should definitely do so without thinking twice. 2. Racism is bad, except when it's against the Asari and also the Volus, and definitely the Batarians. And 3, everyone who disagrees with your beliefs have been brainwashed by aliens who are trying to kill you and must be shot on sight. That's not even hyperbole. You start the game with only the knowledge that this giant thing in the sky is trying to kill you, and the only thing you find out throughout the series is that this is called a Reaper and it is trying to kill you. Right off the bat, the design of the Reapers presents problems with the dichotomy between itself and Shepard. Sovereign is simply just too large for it to constantly confront Shepard and his crew physically, and no one wants to have 20-minute promo battles over morality with a 100-foot tall spaceship. There's a reason why most villains look like Darth Vader rather than a Rancor. I'm not saying that there is no place for non-humanoid villains in media. As a matter of fact, planet-eating aliens from outer space is a perfect threat for a sci-fi epic space opera of this magnitude. It's just that presenting the primary antagonist of your story via hologram kinda rings hollow. So it would only make sense that BioWare provides the Reapers with a smaller scale humanoid mouthpiece to wax poetic with Shepard. However, the problem is that there are absolutely no incentives to supporting the Reapers, because any living creature in the galaxy that has any sort of basic instinct known as survival would be naturally opposed to the Reapers. The writers of ME1 essentially backed themselves into a corner that they felt that they could only escape from by forcing the hand of their characters to do the bidding of the Reapers through energy fields that activate within a certain range, therefore stripping the agency and complexity of the villains of their franchise, rather than reconsidering how to make the Reapers slay in their own story in a more smooth and interesting manner. This is only the first appearance of the Reapers, and they have already made an entire mess of things. Speaking of first appearances, let's talk about the speech that Sovereign gives Shepard when he interacts with the controls. It is one of the defining moments in the trilogy, and many consider it to be the moment where Mass Effect goes from good to great. And it's shit. This isn't objective, of course. This is not some vicious critique on how a 5-minute cutscene ruins an entire video game franchise, because it doesn't do that, but... Have you heard the thing?
There is a realm of existence so far beyond your own, you cannot even imagine it. I am beyond your comprehension. Organic life is nothing but a genetic mutation, an accident. Your lives are measured in years and decades. You wither and die. We are eternal, the pinnacle of evolution and existence. Before us, you are nothing. Your extinction is inevitable. We are the end of everything. We impose order on the chaos of organic evolution. You exist because we allow it, and you will end because we demand it.
Ooh, we are so powerful and you are so insignificant. You're like little ants to us. Oh, stop asking us questions like how old we are or why we built mass relays. You can't even comprehend our totally awesome reasonings because we're just so complex. Shut up, dude. I'm sorry, but almost everything Sovereign says is so horribly trite and vapid. Whenever it isn't spewing out generic non-threatening villain speak 101 or repeating the old Lovecraftian cliche of "you cannot comprehend this giant fish in the sky," it's giving the vaguest non-answers to sensible questions that one could possibly muster. Who built you?
Oh, no one. I've been here since forever, mate.
Where do you live?
Outer space.
Yeah, but where outer space?
Oh, who cares? You'll never go there. Prepare to die, mate.
I know it's the first game in the series and you gotta hold your cards close to your chest, but fuck me dead, give us something of value here. People were frustrated when the Leviathans were introduced in the DLC of ME3 because they believed that their existence retconned the backstory of the Reapers and it caused them to lose their mystique. And to that I say, what backstory? What mystique? I don't know how you could feel so attached to a mystery when said mystery is just a bunch of lasers saying "prepare to face your doom" over and over again. I must stress this because I know someone is going to comment something akin to this. The problem isn't that they don't inform the player of their backstory immediately. The problem is that they do reveal their backstory immediately, and that backstory is we have no backstory. Of course the writers regretted this and retconned the origins of the Reapers, because the galaxy being under threat by creatures that were born before time itself with the sole intent of killing people is far-fetched, even for a science fiction series. It's like watching a James Bond film and right at the midway point you find out that the main villain of the film actually works for Gygas. You're just left there thinking, I mean, I suppose that is a possibility, but what does this have to do with James Bond? I apologize if you were captivated by this scene, but to me this whole encounter is just laughable. It seems like a bunch of aimless existential dread that the writers try to disguise as cosmic horror. Maybe 9-year-old me would have been terrified of the Reapers the same way that the heat death of the universe scared me, but I digress. Back into the topic of mind control. You may be wondering if I am opposed to the idea of brainwashing being used in media due to the whole stripping characters of their agency issue. But honestly, I do appreciate when the act of brainwashing is utilized in a manner that contextualizes the motivations of a character rather than simply overriding them. For example, look no further than Mass Effect itself. Over the course of the trilogy, we are introduced to numerous species within the Mass Effect universe that possess biological abilities that far surpass those of a human being. The Thorians and the Leviathans can possess the minds of practically whoever they desire depending on range. The Protheans can learn how to do almost anything by simply touching it. The Krogan reproduce at such a high rate that the Citadel Council decided that the best course of action was to make them essentially infertile, and it is suggested that even the Asari have the capability to obtain hyper-advanced biotic abilities for better and for worse. Meanwhile, species such as the Quarians and the Volus can't even go outside without wearing a specially tailored suit due to the issues that simply breathing the air outside of their homeworld may bring to their bodies. This asymmetry between the races of the galaxy is constantly reinforced by the narrative of Mass Effect as tensions continuously escalate throughout the series. The Geth, the Genophage, the Ardat Yakshi, the countless experiments that were run by intergalactic conglomerates such as Cerberus, Binary Helix, and Exogeny. It seems as though the Milky Way is in one big race to eat itself. Even being the mixed bag that it is, the DLC of ME3 still provides valuable insight on the previous cycles before Reaper extinction, and how species such as the Leviathan and the Protheans use their biological skills in order to dominate other species that they viewed as lesser. From that perspective, it would only make sense that the Reapers, the cynical, cold-hearted machines who were created with the purpose of preserving the galaxy, would conclude that the best way to prevent the extinction of life in the Milky Way is to stop those who are destroying it. Of course, these aren't actually the motives of the Reapers. Their actual reason for causing all this destruction is the dumbest solution you could possibly think of, but you can see how the Reapers could potentially be faced with a dilemma that required them to assess their desires along with their surroundings, which in turn motivated them towards a decision that develops into their core belief, aka a character. To be fair, this does make the Reapers incredibly bare bones, but honestly, they would be a lot less effective if they possessed any significant character quirks. Sometimes characters just work better when they are a representation of a character's flaws or a symbol of a core problem within the story. That's why it's so annoying that the games don't even bother calling into question how synthetic lifeforms could possess a biotic ability that only the most advanced lifeforms in existence could acquire, because BioWare clearly thought that mind-controlling robots would be a cool concept for a villain in a game, and worked backwards from there. It is abundant that the Reapers weren't created in response to the Thorian, the Geth, and the Leviathan, but rather the inverse. Mind control can also be used to convey the overarching themes of a piece of fiction. Do you want an example? Oh boy, where do you want me to start? Vegeta? I mean, that doesn't really count. What Barbity does to Vegeta is deemed as brainwashing, but Vegeta never really does Barbity's bidding as a result and just goes off to do his own thing. More so, it's the reasoning behind why Vegeta got taken over by Barbity that I want to touch upon. Barbity uses a spell that can take over the mind of the inflicted by taking the evil within their hearts and amplifying it to 11. The spell should realistically work on Vegeta because he is very evil. He did commit genocide on a lot of aliens. But that's not the issue he is struggling with. You see, Vegeta has become a little bitch. Once upon a time, this guy was the prince of the universe who could level entire cities with one arm, and now he has a wife and son, which is cool, I guess. Nowadays, he keeps getting jobbed out and is constantly playing second fiddle to his best friend, worst friend, only friend. That guy has been dead for 7 years, and Vegeta isn't even a better father than his son, and that motherfucker is in high school studying beetles. Part of him still yearns to be the old Vegeta that kicked ass and took names, so when he is inflicted with Barbity's mind control spell, his first instinct is to piss off and go kill Goku, since that's literally all he ever wanted to do since the Z-Fighters beat his ass all those years ago. The existence of Majin Vegeta feels natural in the story of Dragon Ball because it initiates engagement in the form of dramatic irony. The audience is aware of both Vegeta's feelings of inferiority along with the evil wizard's ability to intensify a character's negative traits. We know what the spell does and who exactly is vulnerable to it, so when these two plot points converge, it seems like they were made for each other, because they were. Indoctrination, on the other hand, is so bland, undercooked, and unfocused with the message it wants to present that it doesn't correlate well with any character or emotionally resonate with the audience at all. Usually, an event as drastic as losing your mind would come at a significant point in a character's arc, but a good portion of the time, people become indoctrinated without anyone knowing how or when. The only way you can tell if someone is indoctrinated or not is if they outwardly show that they are indoctrinated, and that's just boring. Imagine if Arthur Morgan didn't contract tuberculosis from that sick guy who he was shaking down for loan shark debts, and instead he goes to the doctor one day and finds out that he has prostate cancer. And then you go to find Micah and it turns out he died from prostate cancer as well. And then you go find Dutch and he says, "Arthur, you're not going to believe this, but I have a plan. I just need money." There's no trick or protocol to help avoid indoctrination, so it can happen to pretty much anyone at any given time and the writers would have no given reason to justify it. Just say that they accidentally stepped on a Reaper artifact off screen and voila, they're indoctrinated. Nobody's going to question how with just how easy it is to get indoctrinated in this game. And if everyone is indoctrinated, then no one is indoctrinated. No, that's right. Come on, hit me. Ah shit, Caleb Widdergast. I haven't seen Critical Role in like 5 years, but sure. So what are the differences between what happened to poor little Caleb and what happens to those who are indoctrinated by the Reapers? Trent Ickathon uses his abilities to alter the memories and beliefs of his students in order for them to do his bidding, just like the Reapers, and after committing said crimes, Caleb loses his mind and becomes irrational, just like those who have been indoctrinated for a substantial period of time. However, that's where the similarities end. Ickathon implanted false memories into his students because he wanted to test how far his disciples were willing to go to serve the Empire, turning them into the idealistic assassins that he wanted them to be, while the Reapers indoctrinate organic life because it would speed up the killing process. The false memories that Caleb was embedded with drove him mad, while the other students accepted their new lives as trained killers, as opposed to Mass Effect, where the only way to escape indoctrination is to be killed or be convinced into committing suicide. There's no point in building the Crucible when all the Alliance needed to do was build a giant megaphone and have Shepard scream "kill yourself" into it. Caleb's struggles don't purely revolve around being brainwashed, but the realization that the life that he dreamed of having ever since he was a little boy was a lie, and how that realization caused him to lose 10 more years of his life. Caleb's story focuses on the aftermath, with him looking to find solace in the boy he once was, come to terms with the soldier he once was, and set everything right as the adventurer he is today. Mass Effect does not even attempt to give any indoctrinated character such a courtesy. They are just fed to the wolves as soon as possible. Alright, hit me with one more, make this a good one. Come on, give me like Dune or something. You can't be serious. Derek Zoolander. From Zoolander. How am I mean, he is an idiot. He's gullible as all hell, is almost universally revered, is in peak physical condition, and most importantly of all, is a male model. He is not a male model because he is an idiot, but he is an idiot because he is a male model. This is a generalization, but it is a generalization that the film directly addresses by illustrating how male models make for ideal assassins who eliminate political figures who look to set regulations that would hinder the influence of the fashion industry. This revelation dictates that Zoolander being brainwashed by Mugatu was a deliberate choice by the filmmakers in order to satirize how obsession with materialism and vapid consumerism overrides the necessity for basic human rights. Vegeta falling under Barbady's spell was a deliberate choice by Akira Toriyama to demonstrate how being overly prideful regarding your goals and accomplishments will corrupt your soul and cause you to lose sight of all the good in your life. The brainwashing committed by Ikathon upon Widowgas was deliberately chosen to be emblematic of how autocratic totalitarianism encourages impressionable youths with high aspirations to discard their individuality and humanity in order to achieve supreme power. Meanwhile, the most that is ever conveyed out of indoctrination is this email Shepard receives in the third game about how indoctrinated politicians are leading people to unknowingly become husks. It tries ever so desperately to represent something, but the established workings of indoctrination make this email fall flat on its face. I'm not scared that my government is going to lead me to a death trap similar to this, because Anthony Albanese isn't being controlled by aliens. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the storyteller to utilize the actions, motives, and backstories of their characters along with the underlying systems, functions, and environments of their world in order to construct a narrative that incorporates all of these elements and expels that concoction through provocative story threads that prompts the characters to react in a manner that exemplifies the metatextual purpose of the event, aka a theme. I didn't even really go in depth into any of these characters. Everything I just said you can get from the plot synopsis. I'll even go as far to say that these characters aren't necessarily the best examples of brainwashing in media anyway. I mean, one example is Zoolander and another is Dragon Ball Z. Both of these things aren't exactly considered high art. Hell, the other example is pretty much a 400-hour long improv session. Who wants to watch 400 hours of people playing Dungeons and Dragons? I would much rather watch 400 hours of people having sex. But even these works are able to recognize that the act of mind control as a major plot point must serve some sort of thematic purpose. However, the act of indoctrination has no intrinsic value to the themes that are presented in the Mass Effect trilogy, such as the true possibility of absolute unity, the purpose of creation, and the value of life in a physical and metaphysical context outside of maybe making the Reapers sound more threatening. If anything, indoctrination is a hindrance for the plot of the games due to how it is constantly used as a get-out-of-jail-free card to prevent the writers from exploring their characters and justifying their actions. Why is Saren, an outspoken challenger to human expansion, employing the help of a blacklisted synthetic race on his mission? Because the Reapers made him do it. Why is Matriarch Benezia, a renowned figure in the Asari religion of Siari, attempting to harvest a nigh-extinct race of musical insects? Because the Reapers made her do it. Why is the Elusive Man so obsessed with seizing Reaper technology for himself? Well, because he believes that utilizing the technology will help humanity become the most powerful. Just kidding, it's because the Reapers made him do it. All this just goes to show that Mass Effect provides absolutely no introspection when it comes to its brainwashing tactics, because they present indoctrination as purely malicious and inexorable. You get indoctrinated, you kill everyone, you get killed, and that is that. How it affects people is not important. All you need to know is that people are indeed affected by it. This is the difference between using brainwashing as a motif in your story and using brainwashing as a plot device. The only noteworthy character of the entire franchise who was personally affected by indoctrination without contracting it was Liara, who was forced to kill her own mother after she became indoctrinated, but their relationship is never considered important until much later in the series. Nezia dying doesn't really change much about Liara as a character anyhow. There are no changes in behavior or motives when Liara watches her mother die. She says that she is now fully committed to the mission of stopping Saren, but she most likely would have helped Shepard find the conduit regardless. If anything, she becomes more distraught about Shepard dying in the following game. Indoctrination isn't used in the same way as, say, a zombie virus, where a character becoming a zombie is considered the conclusion of a character's arc or a major turning point in the narrative. It simply latches onto a character halfway through their arc and leeches off of their screen time until they are inevitably put out of their misery. With the introduction of indoctrination, the primary question that the Mass Effect trilogy poses alters from will we defeat the Reapers to how will we defeat the Reapers? No, seriously, how the hell do you defeat the Reapers? Karpyshyn's insistence on having indoctrination be some AoE attack so that you cannot even interact with a Reaper without losing your mind makes the Reapers so ridiculously overpowered that it actively causes trouble crafting the story for the next installments. If it had to take the might of the entire Citadel fleet just to defeat one Reaper, then how could they possibly defeat thousands of them? While this premise does sound intriguing on paper, the presence of indoctrination makes this battle perplexing. The ending of Mass Effect gets quite a lot of ridicule, which it rightfully deserves, but if we are being honest, can we really view the series ending in any way other than Shepard finding the kill switch for the Reapers and deciding what their fate should be? Shouldn't the first game be partially to blame for that? At the end of the day, Drew Karpyshyn and BioWare penned some of the most fascinating, likable, and captivating characters in video game history while simultaneously crafting a villain that they had absolutely no clue how to defeat or how they tie into the story at large. An unsolvable problem that the team just shelved and said, "Nah, we'll figure it out later." Such wasted potential for such an interesting portrayal of the Fermi paradox in nothing less than... Well, I would say that this is disappointing, but I don't think BioWare or even the average player views this as a flaw, let alone a disappointment. But I believe that if they just sat down and figured out what exactly they wanted to do with the Reapers, then maybe they could have prevented all of this. But we'll get to it when we get to it. First, let's take a little detour. Hello everyone, Avatar McCrossarms here, and today we'll be talking about one of the most overrated games that I have ever played. A game that is universally beloved yet almost ruined an entire franchise. And that game is Bloodborne, SMT Fire Emblem Three Houses, Mass Effect 2. Now don't get me wrong, Mass Effect 2 is a perfect game. It made me feel like I was playing Gears of War, but with a mouse in one hand and another mouse in the other. But as I was playing through the game, probing planets and shit, I couldn't help but think to myself, man, where are the Reapers? I finished the game and the Reapers were nowhere to be found. I kept playing through the loyalty missions, bored out of my mind, because I was just waiting for the Reapers to show up and start making their famous ambiguous threats against humanity. I don't give a bitch about a mother-effing grunt. Show me what Harbinger's doing. I bet it won't say the same thing that the Reapers have been saying for the game that precedes it and the game that follows. If Mass Effect 2 just had the Reapers, then Mass Effect 3 wouldn't have been so bad, you guys. It wouldn't have had the catalyst, you guys. Instead, we waste our time with a bunch of vastly more interesting side quests helping vastly more interesting characters come to terms with their troubled past. Or at least that's what you'd say if you were a sissy liberal. I can't believe I've wasted 10 hours of my life listening to fictional characters bitch about their daddy issues. Why do all the characters have daddy issues? Why do all the characters have issues regarding their creation or their own creations? What the hell is the theme? This is a video game, not a fucking PowerPoint. Talk about killing everything and everyone. That's real cosmic horror. This daddy issue stuff is repetitive and lazy writing, and I noticed because a CinemaSins knockoff told me so 7 years ago. We need to stand up for the Reapers. The Reaper fanbase is being oppressed. Like and share this video if you are... I'm not saying that. I have a digital footprint to uphold. I am not saying that. Overall, I hate this game. The gameplay is crap, the story is crap, the characters are crap, and the missions are crap. Yeah. I'm not sure if you could tell by my overly sarcastic intro, but Mass Effect 2 is considered as a fairly controversial game, and for good reason. The tonal shift that the franchise embarks in is so palpable in terms of looks, gameplay, and narrative. The classic BioWare RPG feel that the original Mass Effect maintained was overhauled in favor of more action-oriented elements reminiscent of over-the-shoulder cover shooters of the time. More notably, the writing team of Mass Effect 2 changed quite considerably, with Drew Karpyshyn parting from the project early into production and senior writer of ME1 Mac Walters taking up the role for lead writer for the series. I'm not here to make any ridiculous claims about how Mac Walters ruined Mass Effect, because truthfully, he helped pen some of the most cherished moments in the franchise. Mac Walters is a talented writer, but much like Karpyshyn, he possessed several weaknesses in his storytelling prowess that continued to stack as the series progressed until Starchild. I have read online that there are some who wish that the plot of Mass Effect 2 was the first half of Mass Effect 3 and focused on gathering war assets and preparing for the Reaper invasion. But that's not what ME3 is about. Sure, that's what it says on the mission descriptions, but most of the time the first 2/3 of the third game is focused on resolving conflicts and tying up storylines that were introduced in the second game. If you just move them forward to ME2, then that would make the pacing of the plot so unbelievably janky and muddy. Could you imagine if they introduced Morden and Legion and then proceeded to kill them off in the same game? Besides, if you remove all the side stories, then you're just left with the shit parts of ME3. Say what you will about Mass Effect 2. Okay, I will. I don't really like the Elusive Man as a villain all that much. He's such a cool concept for a character that most people just forget how unreasonably bland and vague he is. Anytime something intriguing or thought-provoking is brought up within the presence of Tim, he makes sure to just hand-wave it away or mumble out a barely coherent speech about humanity that rarely delves any deeper than surface level. You ask him why he brought you back to life? Humanity. You ask him why Cerberus didn't put a chip in your head so that they could track you? Humanity. You ask why he's so interested in the Reapers and how he even knows of their existence? Humanity. It makes me wonder if they made this character just because Martin Sheen wanted to voice someone in the Mass Effect sequel and they decided to squeeze as much out of him as possible. Things especially become a lot more complicated when Shepard finds out that Tim is actually the leader of Cerberus, a private militia that somehow managed to upgrade from a small crime syndicate to a full-blown terrorist organization with bottomless pockets within the span of 2 years. If that name is familiar, it's because there are several missions in Mass Effect 1 where you uncover wretched experiments and even kidnappings. Hell, if you selected the sole survivor background for Commander Shepard, he discovers that the Threshamore attack that butchered his squadron on Akuz was actually the doing of Cerberus, as they were studying the behaviors of the creatures. A lot of people have already kicked up a stink about how they didn't want to work with Cerberus in Mass Effect 2 and that they just wanted to go back to the Alliance or take on the Collectors on their own, but honestly, I much prefer the direction that BioWare were looking to take here. Mass Effect 2 wants to explore the underbelly of the galaxy. The glitz and glamour of the first game has been replaced with darker shadows and sharper contrasts. The sequel wants to show the player what life is like on the other side of the coin without that outside looking in perspective that felt so prevalent in the previous game, not just with their setting but with their characters. The subject matter of your crew's loyalty missions, both new and returning, are much more aphotic and introspective than before, with some possessing incredibly troubled ideologies. If you were dead for 2 years and just waltzed back to the Alliance the moments you got revived, then you'd miss out on an abundance of excellent characters and interactions. The game is meant to feel that Shepard is back on the front foot again instead of stuck in a conference room figuring out how to prepare for the inevitable invasion. With that being said, did you have to make the Elusive Man a fucking terrorist?
I'm not sure what Mac Walters was trying to prove by making Tim the founder of Cerberus. It's not like they were this considerable force with motion across the Milky Way. They were supposedly vanquished when Shepard destroyed their main base on Neferon. I have no idea why they would make something that was introduced in a barely relevant side mission a major focal point of the series. Even if they were the intergalactic enterprise that ME2 wanted them to be, they still committed numerous atrocities throughout their existence. That should be common knowledge to a majority of people Shepard interacts with. Being associated with a well-known terrorist organization makes me think less of the characters that ME2 introduce, as well as the few returning characters that join Shepard on his mission. Hell, there are some characters that know full well the atrocities that Cerberus has committed but still tell Shepard, hey man, be careful around those cheeky dogs Cerberus, they can't be trusted. I mean, listen to Joker in this scene.
The Alliance took away the one thing that mattered to me. Hell yeah, I joined Cerberus.
You really trust the elusive man?
Well, I don't trust anyone who makes more than I do. But they aren't all bad. Saved your life.
Huh? Didn't you spend your entire life trying to become the best pilot in the Alliance, Mr. Moreau? And you just threw it away to join Space Al-Qaeda? Who cares if the elusive man rebuilt the Normandy with a box of scraps? Kill him! There's a reason Tim hides away in his personal spaceship and only interacts with people via hologram, and that's because if anybody knew where he was, they would arrest him on sight. They'd light him up like a fucking candle. The thing that I find most irritating about this decision is that almost all my problems regarding this specific issue would immediately vanish if BioWare just removed any reference of Cerberus and replaced any time someone says Cerberus with the elusive man. I'm warning you, Shepard, be careful around the elusive man. You shouldn't trust him. When I got contacted by the elusive man, of course I had to help. He was the only one who gets things done around here. The elusive man saved my life. It only makes sense that I would repay him for it. This generates a far more compelling insight into these characters instead of, I didn't like how the Alliance was sitting on their hands, so I decided to join Cerberus and watch them feed live babies to a harvester to see what happens. I got nothing else to say except, what were they thinking? Say what you want about Mass Effect 2. Okay, I will. Yes, Reapers, we have dismissed that claim, is undisputably the worst line in the entire franchise and might be a top 3 worst scene in the entire trilogy, being challenged by a cutscene that will be mentioned later on. Now, I will give the game the benefit of the doubt and say that the scene is incredibly hard to write considering what BioWare wants to do. The goal of this scene is to serve as a removal from the status quo that is Mass Effect 1. There is no grandiose return to the Citadel where Shepard is treated like an almighty conqueror who halted the Reaper threat. He could be granted the title of Spectre once more, but it is merely window dressing. Shepard finds that things have only gotten worse since his death. Both Udina and Anderson are too wrapped up in political red tape to help, and the Citadel Council are so out of their depth when it comes to the Reapers that adopting their guidance would only be counterproductive. This leads Shepard to come to terms that the only man who could truly assist him on his mission against the Reapers is the elusive man. On paper, this scene is serviceable, albeit annoying as it is the most notable step away from the RPG elements of the first game so far. However, this scene runs into some major problems once you delve deeper into the established lore. The Reapers aren't exactly a long-forgotten evil, they are more akin to a myth as it is quite common knowledge that the Protheans were supposedly eradicated by them. You can even find prehistoric depictions of them on some planets. The Asari depicted them as an unholy fiend who would bring about the Rapture. When Shepard initially reported the evidence of the Reapers and their connection to Saren, it wasn't as if the Council just went, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Get off the red sand. They were already aware of who and what the Reapers were, they merely found it virtually impossible for them to have returned, let alone being assisted by one of their most trusted Spectres. That is why when an honest-to-God Reaper actually shows up and maybe even kills them, along with the fact that Spectre who tried to warn them about the Reaper dies under mysterious circumstances a short while later, it would be really hard for the Council to believe anything other than that the Reapers are not only real but are actively trying to destroy all life. But if that was the case and the Citadel Council took the Reaper threat seriously, then what is preventing Shepard from just telling Tim to go fuck himself and joining up with the Alliance again? There are people who love that idea, but I just find it incredibly boring. We already have a Paragon perspective of the primary conflict with the first game. It's about time we get a Renegade perspective as well. but for some reason completely unbeknownst to me, BioWare decided to go about this scene in the worst possible fashion, with the council straight up denying the existence of the Reapers once again, despite literally possessing pieces of its corpse. As a matter of fact, no one in the Citadel believes in the existence of Reapers at all. Couldn't they just take one look at the dead Reaper and recognize that the technology inside is far more advanced, and the council are totally indoctrinated, aren't they? You see what I mean here? About how indoctrination really does nothing except cross characters off a friend or foe list like your Santa Claus or some shit? Say what you want about Mass Effect 2. Yeah, forget about the council. This might be a top 3 worst scene in Mass Effect history. Shortly after obtaining the Reaper IFF, EDI tells Shepard that they must run tests on the device. These vague tests are apparently so mission critical that they require practically every able-bodied patron in the Normandy with a gun to attend it, and instead of docking the Normandy at a nearby settlement, they choose to leave the ship meandering around in space, where it obviously gets attacked by the Collector ship and has all of its crew abducted except for Joker. What can I even say about this shit? The scene of every single squad mate you have just filing into this tiny cramped space shuttle like a bunch of nameless jobbers is so humorous to me. Look at Morden here. When have you ever seen Morden walk like that? Any semblance of character voice is completely shattered the moment this scene plays. It's as if you can hear Mac Walters shouting off screen, "Come on everyone, get off the ship, we have an action set piece coming up." This scene really is evocative of how, at its core, the story missions of Mass Effect 2 can pretty much solve themselves even if Shepard never existed. It's as if we're on a roller coaster ride rather than playing a video game.
Shepard, thank God you're here. I need you to investigate these colonies that keep vanishing even though we know who did it, and how they did it, and what they look like, and where they come from. Shepard, I heard through the grapevine that the Horizon colony has gone dark, which is a sign of an impending Collector attack. Just kidding, they're already attacked it, and I lured them there because that's just something I could do. Shepard, this Turian patrol ship managed to shut down the main Collector ship completely off screen, and I need you to investigate it. Just kidding, it was a trap that I lured you into because I'm an absolute idiot. Wait, you actually found something? You need a Reaper IFF. Well, that's a coincidence, because within the 2 years that you were dead, we managed to find a completely intact dead Reaper that absolutely no one else knows about except for us.
It makes you question why Cerberus even brought Commander Shepard back to life in the first place. He's the only person in the galaxy that can comprehend Prothean technology, and we just have him running around looking at dead bodies like we're playing a shitty Spike Chunsoft game. It just feels like you're being tugged along by the story rather than the other way around. But you want to know the thing that pisses me off the most about this sequence? The thing that grinds my gears? The thing that does me rego? In the grand scheme of things, this scene doesn't even matter. With the first 2 critiques of Mass Effect 2, I could at least determine that overall, they were a means to an end, with that end being that BioWare wanted to explore the Reaper conflict outside the scope of the Alliance. But I simply do not know why they thought that having the Collectors abduct the crew of the Normandy was such a necessity for the main story other than pure melodrama. I suppose it was the game's way of telling the player to hurry up, but there are better alternatives to doing whatever the hell this was. If BioWare wanted to put human lives at stake during the suicide mission, then why not make us try to save the Horizon colonists? That has characters of importance. Hell, they can even have the Collectors kidnap the Vermire survivor if they wanted to. If BioWare wanted to put specifically the lives of the Normandy's crew at stake, then do so in the highly dangerous final mission that this game has spent its entire runtime building towards, instead of getting a bunch of fairies to whisk them away in the middle of the night while Shepard and his pals were playing touch bud in the park. You know what? Forget it. I don't think there's any way to rework your way out of this one. This is simply an idea that should have been left on the cutting room floor.
Say what you want about the Human Reaper is so dumb. It's so fucking dumb, you guys. Even ignoring the obvious stuff, like why is this the only Reaper who takes the appearance of the species that it is made out of, or why Reapers reside in deep space if they are manufactured in a black hole which is just as inaccessible, or why the Reapers would even bother to construct more of themselves if a collection of them were able to wipe out the entirety of one of the most powerful life forms in existence with relative ease. This is such a dumb way to end your game. The transition to third-person shooter meant that it took a lot of influence from the bad stuff in the genre. Mass Effect is not a franchise that needs giant boss battles that look like the cover of a Five Finger Death Punch album. This looks like it belongs in a Shrek rave. I just find it funny how the writers managed to find a solution to one of their biggest plot holes completely unintentionally, and it went over their heads. You know how the Citadel Council just completely passes up on the biggest evidence of an incoming Reaper invasion because the writers wanted to shoehorn Shepard to work with established human extremists? If the Reapers were made out of conquered species all along, then why not just make it so Sovereign was made up of Protheans? So that way, when the Council investigates Sovereign's corpse, they can conclude that Saren's ship was not a Reaper ship, but a Prothean ship, thus justifying why they wouldn't believe Shepard's warnings. Did the editor miss this detail, or because I know they wouldn't just leave a line of a character saying "nuh-uh" in the final script, right? Say what you Jacob Taylor. Say what you want about Mass Effect 2, but its problems are far more isolated when compared to the previous and latter installments. When you first encounter Legion while locating the Reaper IFF, their most notable feature, other than the fact that they are a Geth that doesn't try to kill you on sight, is that they are equipped with a piece of Commander Shepard's N7 armor. If you ask Legion why they are wearing your armor, they reply bluntly that there was a hole. Ask Legion how they found your armor, and they do not respond. This interaction would make the audience believe that Legion has a more personal relationship with Shepard than what has been shown. But as it turns out, this was simply a red herring. Former writer of Legion and ED Chris Latoile revealed that a concept artist drew Legion in N7 armor as a joke, and one of the higher-ups thought that it looked cool, and decided that Legion should be obsessed with Shepard. That interaction with Shepard was just the writer hand-waving the detail away. As I was rambling on about the main problems of Mass Effect 2, I couldn't help but think about just how many of the issues could have possibly been materialized due to executive meddling. I wonder if the Elusive Man was made to be the leader of Cerberus because Cerberus are from the first game and callbacks are cool. If the Collectors invaded the Normandy because getting to play a mission as Joker would be cool. If the Human Reaper was added as the final boss of the game because Casey Hudson thought that fighting the Human Clay album cover would be cool. It's no coincidence that the best parts of ME2 are the small, intricate moments of characterization and world building that the talented writing team were able to wonderfully convey through smart and thought-provoking dialogue and set pieces, while the worst parts of the game are bombastic, head-scratching, and almost always related to the main story. To me, that's kind of a perfect summary of the Mass Effect series. That's why I don't agree with the notion that it's Mass Effect 2's fault that Mass Effect 3 fell so short. It's like saying that it was Mass Effect 1's fault for not killing off Shepard, or that it was Mass Effect 1's fault for not introducing Cerberus as a major player in the galaxy. These are not story beats that were designed to be carried over and resolved. These were components that BioWare crafted or picked up and proceeded to fumble under their own volition. ME2 may seem more secluded from the high stakes and the impending doom that the Reapers bring, but the fact that the sequel strays so far from the path that ME1 had set might be its saving grace. The fact that the sequel wasn't constantly tearing its hair out over the overlooming threat of the Reapers meant that we could evaluate the Milky Way through a whole new lens and flesh out the locations and conflicts that would go on to define the series. Not having to continuously worry about whether someone is indoctrinated or not gives BioWare the agency to use their characters to explore current issues within the galaxy and interpret the recurring theme of creation in different ways. Don't get me wrong, it stumbles plenty of times, but its pitfalls are contained within this microcosm that the writing team can retroactively retcon, unlike ME1 where almost every aspect that was introduced throughout the game was placed with the intent of being used as a building block for the rest of the franchise, no matter how flawed they may be. Instead of those decisions brickwalling the flow of the narrative, with the sequel, the audience can simply look back and say, remember the time that Shepard thought that giant baby inside of a black hole? That was weird, huh? I perceive ME2 in the same way that I perceive something like Jacob Collier's music. For those who aren't in the know, Jacob Collier is notorious for being good at music, really good at music. He is known for his incorporation of unconventional musical techniques into his work and his maximalist approach to songwriting. However, this has led to the stigma that Jacob makes music that doesn't aim to convey emotions or tell a story, but exists purely to showcase how talented he is.
Personally, I do have gripes with Collier's music because he's a big proprietor of this no wrong notes mindset that has led some of his songs to sound muddy and unfocused. But I'm not dismissing his songs as glad-handing and masturbatory all because they have a long runtime or he harmonizes with a sample of a chain scraping across a cheese grater. People discuss the many ways that a piece of music can fail or succeed, but often when talking about Jacob in particular, a lot of the critiques boil down to, oh, if I had the musical ability of Jacob Collier, I wouldn't be making 10-minute orchestral pieces with quarter key changes and 13/4 polyrhythms. I would be making good music, like Nick Cave, or Death Grips, or Carly Rae Jepsen, or Creed. It's as if they don't view him as a musician, but as a guy who plays music, and they're the fan in the front row drunkenly yelling at them to play Freebird. Critics can't seem to accept that he makes the music he makes because that's simply who he is as a person, and asking to strip that away in favor of a more formatized style would practically mean that you just want him to be a completely different artist. I partially believe that Mass Effect 2 receives a similar treatment. You could find hours upon hours of people pointing out the flaws of ME2. Hell, this guy wrote an entire book on it. But a good portion of them try to establish this notion that the game is a failure by judging it by its status as a middle point in a trilogy rather than a singular narrative. This might sound redundant in a video titled
All fact, no fiction.
but it will become more apparent as the video goes on that BioWare clearly had no idea how to end their story or even what they wanted to say with that story outside of a piece of paper that just has cosmic horror hastily scribbled on it with crayon, while ME2 does have something to say with its theme of coming to terms with your own creation, and in my opinion, they execute it relatively well. That's why even after all the plot holes and contrivances, I still finished the game satisfied. It was only after that final cutscene where Shepard looks at the dossier of Harbinger where I realized that this game was the first time that I was invested, not intrigued, invested in the main story of Mass Effect. And that's pretty much entirely because there was not a Reaper in sight. Sure, Mass Effect 2 did not end with Shepard leading a front that was looking to put up a fight against their impending doom as the Reapers descend towards the galaxy as it probably should have done. But I love it all the more for it. Of course, it doesn't help that the one time that ME2 actually focused on the Reapers, it was one of the worst parts of the fucking franchise. Do you know what we haven't touched upon in this video? Mass Effect's DLC. The first and pretty much only worthwhile DLC of ME1 was Bring Down the Sky, a neat little side mission where Commander Shepard and the Normandy crew are tasked with stopping an asteroid that was sent on a trajectory towards a human colony by a group of extremists comprised of a newly introduced galactic race known as Batarians. I want to take a moment to delve into the lore of the Batarians because they sadly become quite relevant later on. Batarians are considered to be less technologically advanced compared to other Council races due to the Prothean ruins that granted them spacelight being extensively damaged by earthquakes, although I wouldn't be surprised at this point if a certain someone made some unfunny joke along the lines of, "Nah, we always hated those guys" later down the line. When humans began to colonize the Skyllian Verge, the Batarian government begged for the Citadel Council to intervene as they were actively building settlements around the Verge, and when the Council refused to do so, the Batarians denounced their status as a Council race and severed all diplomatic ties with the Citadel. In the Bring Down the Sky DLC, the ringleader of the terrorists, named Balak, holds the human workers of the local mining facility hostage, as he explains to Shepard that the attacks are in retaliation to the Skyllian Blitz on Elysium, where humanity took Batarian territory and resources, all while the Council merely sat idly by because they valued a healthy rapport with the Alliance over the well-being of Batarians. When pressed on this, the Council claims that the Skyllian Verge was uninhabited when humans started settling, but that cannot be true because the Skyllian Verge contains Kite's Nest, which is the home cluster of the Batarian people. This, of course, doesn't excuse the Batarists for trying to kill innocent humans in the most absurd manner possible. Like, seriously, slamming a giant rock into something just because you wanted it gone is asinine. Nothing could ever constitute the need of such an act.
I don't have a webcam, but I hope you know that I'm staring directly into your fucking souls. But this mission finally brings forth an underlying problem that has faced the player throughout the game. That humans being good bedfellows with the Citadel Council has rubbed many council and non-council races the wrong way. This had the potential to be addressed by Saren during the main storyline, but Indoctrination completely nixed that idea. BioWare has the opportunity to convey an intricate, multi-layered issue that later titles can build upon, but just like the Reapers, they made the topic of human expansion in the galaxy as shallow as my ability to make up metaphors. You see, the Batarians never actually settled on the planets that humanity was beginning to inhabit. They simply saw other stars in a telescope and said, "That's ours now." When the council protested, saying that's not how it worked, the Batarian government threw a temper tantrum and irrationally cut off all ties to the Citadel in order to tend to their technologically stunted homeworld because. Not only that, but the hegemony proceeded to funnel money and weapons to pirates and criminal organizations so that they can conduct attacks on human colonies within the Skillian Verge, just in case it wasn't obvious enough that these guys are irrefutable douche canoes. But what about the Kite's Nest debacle? Well, the Kite's Nest cluster was introduced in Mass Effect 2, while the Council's response took place in Mass Effect 1. Considering that this dilemma was never addressed again, we can assume that this was merely an oversight on BioWare's part. They just wanted to make it so that the Batarians never actually claimed the Skillian Verge, even though they live in it. Right. But who really cares about all the finger pointing and who started what? That's just the doing of elites and bigwigs. Surely the average Batarian aren't as diabolical as they seem, right? I wouldn't know, we weren't shown any of them. There are 8 named Batarian characters throughout the Mass Effect series, and of those 8 characters, 3 of them are terrorists, 2 of them are mercenaries, and 1 is a bartender who roofies human patrons at his bar. The only 2 Batarians who are somewhat decent people are both bodyguards of Arya T'Loak, and I am 75% certain that they were supposed to be the same person, but BioWare forgot what their name was. At times, BioWare attempt to make claims that these are just stereotypes and are not evocative of all Batarians, but they go on to state that slavery is apparently so ingrained within the social hierarchy of Batarian life that when the Citadel Council told them to stop slave trading, the Batarian government considered it as a discriminatory act. Not because of some religious belief or a chauvinistic worldview, although they are deeply racist, don't make any mistake about that. They just make a lot of money off it. Sure, there are species that aren't presented as the friendliest. The Krogan are notoriously aggressive and known to participate in shady underworld dealings such as drug running and mercenary work, but they are a species that has spent the past 5,000 years dealing with overpopulation, resource scarcity, nuclear winters, wars with space bugs, and a genetic bomb that sent them spiraling towards extinction. The Geth are initially shown as Reaper henchmen impaling people on giant glowing spikes, but it is eventually revealed that these are defectors known as heretics who departed from the main Geth network in order to worship the Reapers as their new synthetic gods. The Vorkar are viciously hostile and barely intelligent, but they are considered as an off-kilter branch of Parasite that is incapable of evolving and are treated more like vermin than sentient life. The Batarians are shown as arrogant, lying scumbags, but with no rhyme or reason. It's simply just in their blood to do so. This series takes all possible opportunities to present the Batarians as conniving, bigoted, and profoundly hypocritical to the point of absurdity. They are portrayed with all the poise and dignity of a Stone Toss comic. All this just proves that the Mass Effect team was still set on continuing the binary good versus evil dynamic that was ever present during the Reaper storyline, despite their highly touted morality system suggesting otherwise, a crutch that inevitably crumbles under Mass Effect's weight by series end. With the more mainstream friendly mindset of Mass Effect 2 came oodles of more downloadable content. I'm talking about new characters, new locations, new vehicles, new armor, new weapons, new outfits, even an interactive comic for players who haven't played the first game. More importantly, Mass Effect 2 had 3 major DLC packs that provided players with new side stories. The first of these DLCs was Overlord, where Commander Shepard is tasked with stopping a human who had been merged with a virtual intelligence and inadvertently became a VI Overlord. This questline is fine for the most part, with some pretty gnarly imagery being thrown in there, but my main complaint with it is the use of the autistic people are geniuses who can communicate with aliens cliche. 80% of writers have no idea how to write an autistic character, so it always boils down to one of 4 character archetypes. The first is whatever the fuck C was trying to do in that one film. The second is an emotionally detached, annoying, unfunny Sheldon Cooper-esque jabroni. The third is a child with superhuman abilities or a 400 IQ because apparently autistic people are not allowed to live past the age of 16 and are hunted down like Logan's Run. And the fourth is a completely neuronormative guy who has a fan base that is convinced that he is autistic coded. Oh my god, he likes solving mysteries? That's his hyperfixation. Look at him splitting up for clues. That's him stimming. Don't worry, officer, I'm simply stimming towards your gun holster. The second of the DLCs is Lair of the Shadow Broker, where Shepard teams up with Liara to track down the elusive Shadow Broker who has kidnapped Liara's partner in crime. And it is really good. It's fun, it's explosive, it's well written, and it provides some much needed closure to a member of the original Normandy crew that gets the least amount of screen time in the main game. Outside of the one who died and the one who doesn't associate with terrorists, of course. I would say that I dislike the insinuation that the collectors tried to buy Shepard's ashes from the Shadow Broker. I was never really a fan of the Reaper's obsession with Shepard to begin with, so this didn't help. But overall, a really enjoyable experience. Do you know what is not an enjoyable experience? Testicular torsion, but I'd rather go through that again than play Arrival again. Arrival is the third and final major DLC pack of ME2, and it is by far the worst. Its status has practically regressed to that of a joke due to how incompetent it is at delivering anything engaging or meaningful to the Mass Effect universe. This isn't through a lack of effort. BioWare obviously thought very highly of this DLC, and as such treated it with the utmost importance. But the fact that it was placed on this pedestal just makes it even more pathetic. It doesn't even anger me, it's just a complete whiff of a story that misses on almost all fronts. Arrival starts when you receive a message from Admiral Hackett, who informs Shepard that... Admiral Hackett, where have you been this entire time? You're not going to comment on me working with Cerberus? Whatever. He informs Shepard about an Alliance operative named Dr. Amanda Kenson, who has discovered a Reaper artifact in Batarian space, but has been captured and placed in a military outpost on the Batarian planet of Artod. What a coinkydink that the only members of the Systems Alliance who actually believe that the Reapers exist are the ones that Shepard is on good terms with. Shepard is tasked with rescuing her all by his lonesome to not arouse any suspicion, and does so by painting the town red with every Batarian in sight. Shepard and Kenson steal a shuttle and head off to her secret base, as Kenson explains that she has received a vision from a Reaper artifact which details how the Reapers will be coming through the Alpha Relay in 2 days, and that Kenson and her team have attached thrusters to the asteroid that the base is settled on with the intention of crashing it into the mass relay, destroying it, and delaying the arrival. There's no way you can fucking read this with a straight face. That Kenson and her team have attached thrusters to the asteroid that the base is settled on with the intent of crashing it into the mass relay, destroying it, and delaying the arrival of the Reapers. First off, no! You cannot destroy a mass relay by just ramming it into an asteroid. It has already been established that the mass relays are virtually indestructible. In Mass Effect 1, you learn about the Mu relay, which was hit with the full power of a literal supernova and was merely pushed out of orbit because of it. Dr. Kenson tries to retcon this into simply being a rumor, but how else could a mass relay possibly be displaced? Did the Batarians do it as some kind of prank? Secondly, how do the Reapers get to the Alpha Relay? Is there a mass relay in deep space, or can they just travel through mass relays whenever they please? If so, then why did Sovereign have to use the conduit to get to the Citadel? Thirdly, why would the Reapers even bother using the Alpha Relay if they could still reach the Milky Way on foot? Tentacle space thing in the span of 6 months, which is an insignificant amount of time for these supposedly immortal beings. The DLC was made very late into the lifecycle of ME2, which means that BioWare was already fairly deep into production for ME3 and most likely had the Reapers penciled in to appear and start their whole galaxy-conquering endeavor in that game. If that is the case, then I can't believe Casey Hudson approved a storyline that, in the grand scheme of things, is so high in scale yet so low in stakes. Fourthly,
2 days? The Reapers are coming in 2 days?
Jesus Christ, Hackett, what took you so long to hit up Shepard? You received a warning about the Reapers arriving via a vision, and it never crossed your mind to inform the only person in the galaxy who frequently receives Reaper visions? The project was all set to go by the time Dr. Kenson got arrested, so why did they just sit on their hands without the project leader? Who cares about some crusty, poorly rendered old white bitch? Get me on the scene, I'll blow the relay up by my damn self, I'm a real geeker. That's for true. Fifthly, why do Reaper artifacts transmit visions that are similar to the ones found in Prothean beacons? These beacons were made by Protheans for Protheans, since they are known to transmit memories and knowledge through contact, an ability that is exclusive to them. So how can the Reapers produce similar visions? This could have already been solved by BioWare fully committing to the Reapers are made of advanced species angle, but alas. Sixthly, why would... You know what? Just for a second, disregard all the plot holes that this scene alone creates, and really process what has been laid out in front of us. Shepard must destroy a mass relay to prevent the Reapers from arriving in 2 days. This is a DLC. This could have been the plot of Mass Effect 2. It shouldn't, but it could have been. BioWare told all the side characters to get out of the pool because they couldn't afford to bring back their voice actors for the DLC, and they decided that this is the story they wanted to go with. We arrive at the base and Kenson and her entire team are indoctrinated. Of course they are. They had a Reaper artifact in their possession, and it doesn't matter if it has been dead for 1 billion years or if it's a piece of its pubic hair. Simply interacting with anything that is associated with a Reaper automatically makes you cuckoo crazy. Thanks, Drew. At this rate, just make it so that everyone who has ever used a mass relay gets indoctrinated too. How convenient of the Reapers to activate the stop the project stage of the indoctrination process, not when Kenson was imprisoned or in the shuttle with Shepard, but just after she had explained everything regarding the project to Shepard, because nobody in the writing team knows what the fuck indoctrination is or does, except that they have to use it. It is at this specific point in the Mass Effect series where the elephant in the room begins to press against the walls. How is Shepard not indoctrinated? He literally just had a Reaper artifact invade his mind. It would be easy to scold Mac Walters for having Shepard simply walk up to a Reaper after all this time, but I partially put the blame on the ME1 writers for not foreseeing the possibility that Shepard could become indoctrinated. Something tells me that BioWare initially crafted some reasoning about how the technology used to rebuild Shepard makes him immune to indoctrination, but for some reason they just gave up on it halfway through and decided to never explain it. It's either that or Shepard is indoctrinated and... well, that's a whole other can of worms. Kenson sends the dogs on Shepard and he fends them off until Object Rho, the artifact is called Object Rho by the way, knocks him out. Shepard wakes up after 2 days with 2 hours left until the Reapers arrive. This is the quality of writing the series has fallen to. Well, I wouldn't say fallen, it is the DLC of a competently written game, but it was released closer to ME3 than ME2, so take from that what you will. Shepard blasts his way through legions of indoctrinated government workers as he activates the engines to set the asteroid on a collision course with the Alpha Relay. Shepard is faced with either calling in the Normandy or warning the colonists, but none of that matters because Kenson cuts him off and tells him that she's going to cause an ESO core meltdown and blow up the asteroid. Shepard hurries to the oh yeah, I forgot to mention an important detail. I sure am terrible when it comes to that, huh? You know how the asteroid is supposed to collide with the Alpha Relay? Well, doing so will create an energy blast on the level of a supernova that will destroy the system of Bahak. This includes the planet of Artot, which in turn will kill 304,942 Batarians! I really dislike covering this part in the series because there is nothing to analyze here. Everything that is bad about this DLC is so evident by just playing the game. Did you, a fellow Mass Effect fan, really need to click on this video and listen to me lecture you in order to figure out why Shepard dooming the fates of 304,942 Batarians and immediately glossing over it as dumb? So I'm not even going to entertain the thought of explaining why this is bad. Instead, I'm going to elaborate on the consequences. When Hackett confronts Shepard face to face, he tells the commander that although he understands that completing the project was the only way to delay the arrival of the Reapers, the death of all those colonists is still technically on Shepard's hands and he will have to answer for his actions in the court of law. In response to this, Shepard makes the noble decision of turning himself in so he can give one last ditch effort of convincing the galaxy of the Reaper's existence. This is a fine lead-in to the next game. The tensions of the humans and the Batarians are at an all-time high, as Earth must weigh the validity of Shepard's claims and whether the value of 304,942 lives is worth delaying a threat that pretty much everyone in the galaxy outside of 20 or so people doesn't even know exists, or where or when they would attack. Take a wild guess where the Reapers began their journey to eliminate advanced life in Mass Effect 3. That's right, Batarian airspace. Before Shepard could even prove that they exist to the Alliance, the Reapers make their presence known by arriving and immediately wiping all of the Batarian worlds out. Whether Shepard destroyed the Alpha Relay or not, the Batarians were doomed to be slaughtered first by pure chance. For a moment, imagine being in the shoes of a Batarian seeking refuge within the holding docks of the Citadel. Barely enough room to sleep and constantly fighting for the limited scraps that can be found. You were just left with the knowledge that you were the first victims of the Reapers, and all you could possibly do is just ask why. Whilst on the Citadel, Shepard is confronted by Balak, the leader of those terrorists who tried to crash an asteroid into a human colony, if you chose to let him live, of course. Does Balak, captain of the Batarian external forces and the primary representation of the Batarian race thus far in the franchise, A. point out the parallels between the two characters and show respect to Shepard's effort to prevent the Reapers despite their mutual hatred for each other, B. appear distraught over losing his home and apologize for attempting to commit an act of terror, or C. point a gun at Shepard's head and blame him for all the misfortunes that have come across the Batarians and cut off all life support machines at Hawaii Hospital and cause a ship crash at the docks that kills 117 Alliance soldiers. I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they fucking did this. The first game makes hating humans the entire personality trait of the Batarians to the point that it completely dictates their direction for the rest of the series. I have never seen a race in a sci-fi series that has been met with so much disdain from their own creators before. I suppose disdain is the wrong word here. Torment seems more appropriate. Batarians are given absolutely nothing to make people care about them in any capacity and are instead met with constant degradation to the point that they exist just to be memed on. Go on the internet and take a shot whenever someone makes a joke about Shepard doing a rival as an excuse to kill Batarians. See what happens. Honestly, I can't blame them. When you accomplish such a ridiculous task as killing 999,999 Batarians by blowing up a mass relay, then of course all that can be done is just to make jokes about it. Some may defend this depiction of the Batarians by saying something along the lines of, well, not every alien has to be morally just or have a tragic backstory. They can just be assholes. There are assholes in real life just like the Batarians. And to that I propose, why are there no rapists in Mass Effect? Why are there no pedophiles in Mass Effect? There are pedophiles in real life. Why don't we meet any of them? I mean, you play as one if you romance Liara. If Mass Effect is so realistic, how come your girlfriend doesn't cheat on you with your best friend? The truth is, characters aren't supposed to be real people. They are amalgamations of traits, tendencies, motives, and beliefs inside the skin of a real person that contributes towards the themes of a piece of media in their own way, and the Batarians contribute absolutely nothing besides being cannon fodder for the main character. At least the Volus, Elcor, and Hannah are used as comedic relief. Nobody in game ever dwells on just how pathetic the Batarians are. It's just an accepted fact that they are. I made a joke about the Batarians being depicted like some SJW strawman in a Stone Toss comic, but the fact that the game is insistent on hammering in that they are a race of two-faced, corrupt aliens that possess an irrational victim complex really is the kind of dehumanizing sentiments that you will see in propaganda pieces. Rather than attempt to construct anything of substance with the species, BioWare just goes, hey look, space North Korea, and proceeds to make them the punching bag of the galaxy. It makes it so that when 300
That's annoying.
are killed in a giant explosion that was out of their control, all the game wants you to do is just point and laugh because this is them getting their comeuppance. This is racist. Not in a using racism as a theme way or a showing the real life prejudices of the author way. This is a racist depiction of a fictional race in a fictional story. It doesn't make the story of Mass Effect feel like it takes place in a real world, but instead it makes it feel like a piece of propaganda made within that world. Do you want to know the cherry on top of this cyanide sundae? You don't even kill 300,000 Batarians. You kill 90,000 Batarians and the 215 slaves that they keep on Artot. Commander Shepard is responsible for taking the lives of 215 innocent people, but don't worry about the 90,000 Batarians that died. They all had it coming. Great job, Commander. Shepard hurries to the reactor control room where Kenson utters one of the unintentionally funniest pieces of dialogue in the whole game.
I will die, never having seen the Reaper's blessings, and you will just die.
Why does she say it like that?
Die.
In all seriousness, this could have been a decent enough line. Shepard stabilizes the reactor core and Kenson just gives up and blows herself up. I've got nothing to say about this. Die. Shepard gets knocked out by the explosion and wakes up again, but this time we have 30 minutes until the Reapers. Okay, there is absolutely no way the writers are taking this seriously. We've been knocked out twice in a row. This is clearly BioWare taking the piss, surely. Fuck it, I've done everything I came here to do, and also a bunch of stuff that I was forced to do. Let's call the Normandy and blow this popsicle stand. Wait a gosh darn freaking second, cunt. Where has the Normandy been this entire time? Surely the crew would have been concerned about their captain going missing for 2 whole days now. Shepard fights his way out of the base as he uses the comm relay to contact the Normandy rather than radio it through his earpiece, because I'm certain whoever wrote this DLC is getting paid minimum wage. Instead, he is met with a hologram of Harbinger, the Reaper who has been assuming control of the Collectors this whole time, who continues the whole civilization is doomed, prepare to meet your end crap from the first game, which is an indicator that BioWare still hasn't figured out what they want to do with the Reapers yet. The only difference between this and Sovereign's speech is that at least Sovereign has a cool voice, I guess. Shepard gets picked up by some other guy piloting the Normandy because Seth Rogen was too busy recording Family Guy skits, and the mission is finally over. What I am about to say may be considered harsh to some, but Arrival should have never existed. Whoever suggested this be in the game should have had their salary cut, and whoever approved of it should have had their house foreclosed. My tangent about the Batarians may have sounded rather minor in the grand scheme of things, but it is evocative of how the Reapers begin to swallow the narrative of the Mass Effect trilogy like an invasive weed until everything else is rendered meaningless and they are the only important principle in the story. What made Mass Effect feel so rich and replete was the expertly woven, intertwining stories that gave each of the races in the Milky Way a sense of authenticity and provided a clear, sophisticated message for the player to deliberate. Everything felt as if they existed for a purpose, even if it was something as small as making the player laugh, and stripping that down to mere numbers on a screen is disheartening. Even with a species that is written so poorly that it is objectionable, the mere presence of these stupid squids and their stupid indoctrination and their stupid giant relay manages to suck all the remaining breadth and validity away from their existence. Everything about the Reapers commands the player to turn their brains off, literally, to forget that they are playing Mass Effect and are instead playing some derivative, convoluted, dime-a-dozen sci-fi schlock. This is the first time where Mass Effect did something that made me think less of it, and sadly, it was not the last. What's going on? Why isn't it moving to the next chapter? Oh, the dark energy stuff. Right, let's knock this down quick. I hate reusing jokes. You know how Drew Karpyshyn left Mass Effect 2 midway through production? Well, his original intent for the ending of Mass Effect 3 was to reveal that the Reapers were killing all advanced life due to their overuse of dark energy, which is the substance released from Element 0 to create Mass Effect fields. The Reapers would explain that the overabundance of dark energy was causing star systems to collapse in on itself, and the only way to prevent the Milky Way from dying was to destroy all advanced life before things got to the point of no return. Many suspect that this ending was changed due to the original script of Mass Effect 3 getting leaked online, but it was most likely due to BioWare realizing that there is a massive gun with the sole purpose of shooting things into the giant black hole in the middle of the galaxy. Here are the Reapers. They're on Earth now. How no one was alerted of this beats me. I'm done doing the explaining everything in chronological order shtick. There's too much bad stuff to do that. There's stupid kids here. I kinda like how it implies that Vancouver is considered to be the capital of the world. Heard the house prices are pretty bad over there. Let's just go to Mars and yell and scream some more. Shepard arrives on Mars and Liara finds the Crucible that will defeat the Reapers. I wasn't even skimming over the plot, that's exactly how it happens. Shepard runs into Liara while searching a Prothean dig site, and Liara reveals that within the 6 months between ME2 and ME3, researchers managed to find the blueprint of a giant EMP that can wipe out the Reapers once and for all, located in the Prothean archives of Mars. A lot have argued that the reason why the Crucible appears so abruptly is because Mass Effect 2 was too busy playing with the collectors to properly introduce it into the plot. That is true, but it is not an excuse for the sorry excuse of an introduction that Mass Effect 3 gave it. Surely there are an infinite number of better ways to present the most blatant Deus Ex Machina possible. Make it the contents of that dossier that Shepard reads at the end of ME2 and explain that he picked it up while inside the collector base. It is partially Prothean after all. Have Shepard be contacted by Shala, that was her name, who tells him that she keeps having visions of a massive weapon that Shepard must try to locate. Make Eden Prime the first mission in the game after Earth, and have Javik inform Shepard of the Crucible instead of locking him behind a paywall. I don't know, something other than just having it lie around on the ground in Mars of all places. As a matter of fact, I would have much rather had the Crucible be introduced off screen than have it show up on Mars. Why Mars? I thought Earth found a small data cache that only allowed humans to become a spacefaring species. For some obtuse reason, humanity begins to become the main character of Mass Effect 3 instead of, the actual main character. Almost all the events regarding the Reaper plot heavily revolve around these dumb featherless bipeds. The first attack on Citadel space takes place on Earth, the Crucible is found on Mars, the Citadel is attacked by pro-human extremists, and the Reapers end up moving the Citadel to Earth. Sure, the other races get some important stuff too, but all the events that actually determine the fate of the galaxy at large seem to be solely in the hands of humanity. This goes to show that this game still suffers from the looks coolitis of the previous game, but to a much worse extent because this is the final game and we don't have time to do all that silly stuff. Shepard and Liara find out that the dig site was in fact sabotaged by a Cerberus double agent, which also explains why there are a bunch of trigger-happy Cerberus goons hanging around the archives. We take a peek at what's under those helmets and...
Oh god, he looks like a husk.
As I mentioned before, Cerberus are terrorists. In the first game, they frequently use live humans as subjects for their sick experiments, mostly involving creatures such as the Rachni, Threshamores, and even Reaper husks. When Admiral Kahoku discovers the true identity of Cerberus as a Black Ops organization that was an offshoot of the Systems Alliance, as well as their involvement with recent Threshamore attacks on human colonies, he was detained, brutally tortured, and subsequently killed. However, the presence of Cerberus is contained entirely within the side missions of ME1. They have no purpose in the plot of the main story, they merely serve as a representation that there are humans who do not stand with the new diplomatic approach of the Alliance, while also giving the player a new type of enemy to shoot at. Theoretically, it is possible to complete Mass Effect 1 without ever coming across the revelation that Cerberus are evil, or even come across their existence. That is why when BioWare made Cerberus a major component of the story in Mass Effect 2, I was a lot less harsh on the decision than the general consensus, because I am at least able to see the vision of the ME2 team. This new affiliation grants Shepard the ability to traverse the Terminus systems, which is something that you never really do in the first game, despite the reason that Shepard was granted the title of Spectre was so the Council could avoid going to war with the Terminus systems. Because of this, BioWare can actually showcase the trials and tribulations that the races of the Milky Way face, as opposed to the abundance of exposition that ME1 was saddled with. Most importantly, the presence of Cerberus gives Shepard a new perspective on how to tackle the oncoming Reaper threat. It served as a fresh start for an element of the original game that the developers thought didn't need much elaboration. Did BioWare achieve that goal to the best of their abilities? No, not at all, but at the very least they did establish that the Alliance and Cerberus serve as the figurative angel and devil on the shoulders of Commander Shepard. Captain Anderson pleading Shepard to not repeat the mistakes that forced humanity to wage war with their galactic brethren, while the elusive man beckons Shepard to take the cruel reality of this galaxy by the balls and steer it in the direction that prioritizes equity rather than equality. I may sound like a broken record, but the Paragon Renegade morality system serves as more than just a mere gameplay mechanic, but as a symbol for the ongoing conflict within Shepard that he must ultimately resolve in the final installment. Will Shepard destroy or control the Reapers? Or at least that's what he would face if Mac Walters didn't discover the wonders of bath salts midway through production. As you all know, Cerberus are back to being unabashedly evil in Mass Effect 3 because, drumroll please, they are all indoctrinated. It turns out that Cerberus somehow managed to recover the Human Reaper from the end of Mass Effect 2, and the Elusive Man has been using its contents to give himself some sick new modifications, as well as turning his employees into husks with guns and armor. Of course, this all backfired, and now all of Cerberus are unknowingly pawns of the Reapers. This decision completely eliminates anything remotely interesting or engaging regarding Cerberus that the second game spent so much time manufacturing. The idea of a private ops organization working within the shadows and utilizing covertness to achieve their goals as opposed to the forthrightness of the Alliance is hijacked in order to make way for bullet sponges who seemingly show up on a whim. Now they are sending entire battalions to kill a fertile Krogan and plant a nuke on Tachanka instead of using the multiple infiltration agents at their disposal. And that's not even getting into the bloody coup they attempt on the Citadel. Killing the Council and taking over the Citadel is something that serves little to no purpose for Cerberus, and if anything, only serves to make the Citadel easier for the Reapers to invade. Probably because Cerberus now are the Reapers, but in orange paint. The idea that a considerable portion of humans and even members of the system's alliance were in cahoots with Cerberus because they were frustrated with the lack of respect that humanity have been receiving from the Citadel Council is an interesting aspect of Cerberus's presence in the previous game, which must mean that BioWare must scrap it and instead make everybody aware that they are no good, rotten, radicalized pro-human extremists looking to destroy the galaxy, even before they were revealed to be indoctrinated. The only person who actually sides with Cerberus who didn't also sip the Reaper Kool-Aid was Udina, which I actually expected to be the case since ME2, but revealing it in ME3 just makes him look like a fucking idiot. Hell, the mystique of the final mission of ME2 has vanished now that we know that Cerberus just went back through the Omega-4 relay to collect the baby Reaper. But the biggest victim of having Cerberus become puppets for the Reapers is the Elusive Man. An enigmatic philanthropist with bottomless pockets personally funding his quixotic endeavors, he is one of the few people in the galaxy who are not just aware of the existence of the Reapers, but the capabilities that they possess. He figured that defeating the Reapers would not have been enough to earn the respect of the Citadel, just like what happened with Sovereign, but dismantling these apex predators and learning to manipulate their abilities would grant humans the technological edge necessary to stand up to the powers that be. He was so committed to having humanity assert themselves as the premier race in the Milky Way that he spent $40 billion out of his own pocket to revive Commander Shepard and rebuild the most technologically advanced spaceship in the galaxy just because having Shepard on his side will make other humans more willing to join his cause. His ideals are undoubtedly morally flawed, but Tim is meant to be a representation of the common man on Earth who feel disrespected by the Citadel races and disappointed by the system's alliance for taking it on the chin. This is why it is so infuriating that the Elusive Man merely serves as another spokesperson for the Reapers in Mass Effect 3. Every single word that Tim speaks in ME3 is now considered null and void because he is no longer in control of what he is saying or doing. The distinct charisma and unique outlook he provided that made him so highly regarded by the fanbase is no more. Now he is just a human version of Saren. This is BioWare rejecting what ME2 sought out to achieve, thus diminishing the Elusive Man to nothing more than a mustache-twirling Saturday morning cartoon villain. My problem isn't that the game perceives Tim's views as the wrong choice. I'm not trying to tell you that he was some misunderstood genius or something, but my issues lie in that by having the Elusive Man be indoctrinated, the game perceives his beliefs as unimportant or irrelevant despite those views making the series as a whole more ruminative and interesting. This is essentially BioWare telling the player that Mass Effect 2 was a waste of time, even though it was the most thorough and gratifying game in the entire franchise. Or maybe that was the plan from the start and Tim was nothing more than a red herring. In that case, congratulations BioWare, the most beloved game in the series is the one that serves zero purpose to the rest of it. Kinda says a lot about the Reapers, doesn't it? Instead, we are stuck with this weird dissonance between what the game wants to do, which is tell Tim that he has been indoctrinated, and what the game has to do, which is drag out this conflict to the big finale. What we are left is Tim doing his typical ascend humanity to the peak of evolution spiel, only for Shepard to interject and proclaim the obvious, only for Tim to start going, no, I'm not indoctrinated, I'm right. You're indoctrinated. You're the one who's indoctrinated, like a pathetic little dweeb, and move on as if nothing happened. No wonder ME2 didn't have any Reapers in the main game. I couldn't imagine having to hear this shit for 3 games in a row. What personally puzzles me is the fact that BioWare did not have a reason to reduce Cerberus to blatantly villainous antagonists. Is it because they needed new enemy types? I'm not sure if they got the memo, but the Reapers are here now. They've assimilated every single race in the galaxy and turned them into repugnant abominations, and you're telling me that they couldn't think of one that shoots projectiles similar to a gun? Oh, what's this you say? Cerberus enemies need to appear for the missions where you fight Cerberus? Well, there shouldn't be any missions where you fight Cerberus. They all suck! My initial worries regarding how Indoctrination would tank the quality of the later title's narrative as more and more people start falling victim to it ended up being proven true, as it lays claim to the character that had the most storytelling potential. Unfortunately, this isn't the only storyline that the Reapers managed to sink their grubby tentacles into. The Geth-Quarian conflict also sees a notable drop in quality, partially due to BioWare trying to accommodate them into the overarching Reaper plot. In the original Mass Effect, the Geth were presented as mere servants of the Reapers. All we knew at the time was that the Quarians created the Geth turned on their creators, caused the Quarians to leave their homeworld, and after the Citadel initiated restrictions to artificial and virtual intelligence, they migrated to beyond the Perseus Veil and have supposedly returned to help Sovereign. However, in Mass Effect 2, these connotations are subverted through the Geth squadmate Legion. Over the course of the game, they inform Shepard that the Geth actually share a neural network where individual Geth compile complex thoughts and situations in order for all Geth to collectively analyze and resolve at the speed of light. And for the first time in their existence, the Geth have come to a disagreement regarding the Reapers. When Sovereign came back to life and offered the Geth a Reaper body to store all of their programs in exchange for their assistance with capturing the Citadel, some Geth rejected the offer as they wished to live peacefully under the fruition of their own technology, while other Geth chose to accept the Reapers as their messiahs and in turn abandoned the Geth network to join Sovereign. The main talking point of this revelation is that the Geth operate in a manner that is completely alien to every other species that the player comes across in Mass Effect, even the humans themselves. The Geth possess true unity and equality amongst themselves, something that the other races view as strange and inhumane because they believe that they cannot achieve it themselves. They serve as a reminder to the player that in order to repel the Reapers, the Milky Way must stand united and adopt a mentality similar to one of their biggest enemies. But as par for the course with this writing staff, the Geth become flanderized in Mass Effect 3, as their entire purpose morphs into robots are actually human story number 503, which is something that their head writer in ME2 sought out not to do, and Legion wants to use Reaper technology to ascend to sentience, even though it was established that they were opposed to doing so, and the Quarians were made to look like they were entirely in the wrong, and the Geth were merely acting in self-defense, despite them killing so many Quarians that you can compact all of them into a single space station. It causes a strange inconsistency when it comes to the characterization of Legion. They want to utilize Reaper code to unlock true intelligence within Geth, yet are still opposed to Geth who have sided with the Reapers for that very reason. Legion is no longer indicative of the Geth as a whole as they were in ME2, but rather a character who seems motivated by their own personal agendas despite the existence of the neural network that the Geth share. Remember way back in the ME1 chapter when I said, sometimes characters just work better when they are a representation of a character's flaws or a symbol of a core problem within the story. The writers tried to make Legion more than the sum of their parts and in turn made them less interesting of a character because it overthrows their original intention for something far less unique and engaging. The reason why the writers implemented the Reaper Code subplot was simple. The Reapers are bad, and we can't have the Geth side with the Reapers because that would mean that they would actually comply with our villain, and that isn't very cosmic horror of them. Therefore, we must scramble to make all Geth on the same page again. This is a change that BioWare felt was necessary because they spent so much time in this game lampooning into the players' skulls that anybody who even attempts the thought of any other solution outside of completely obliterating the Reapers has been possessed by them and must be put down like a stray dog on the street immediately. But by doing so, they once again strip a beloved character of what made them so significant to the franchise. This is the effect of changing the primary conundrum of the trilogy to will we defeat the Reapers to how will we defeat the Reapers. A character that was presented as a symbolic message of irrelevant conflict is dwindled down to being a tally mark that is either added or subtracted to the board of allies. Besides, the robots become human storyline is captured far more effectively with another character, Edie. Having both of these story arcs coexist actually causes massive problems for one of the endings of ME3, but we'll get to that later. If anything, I'm thankful that BioWare's acts of narrative terrorism didn't manage to reach the Chichanka arc of ME3. I don't think my heart could have taken if it turned out that Gatatogi Venk was making a cure to the genophage out of Reaper juice or something. However, BioWare isn't done waging its warpath yet, as we are now about to witness. It turns out that the Citadel are not indoctrinated. Or maybe they are. Who knows how indoctrination works anymore. Whatever, the Asari counselor pulls Shepard aside and reveals that there is a Prothean artifact that may help the commander reveal the identity of the catalyst. However, this artifact is located on the Asari homeworld of Thessia, which is currently on the brink of collapse due to a Reaper invasion. So Shepard and his crew gun towards Thessia and enter the Temple of Athame, where the Asari military have been anticipating the arrival of Shepard. Now, I must confess that when I first played this mission, I opted to bring Ashley along with Liara, as we were entering a place of worship and I thought it was thematically appropriate for Ashley to occupy us since her faith is such a core part of her character. It was only until I was talking about this scene with a friend after I completed the game that I was told that bringing Javik for this mission was a necessity. In my defense, I had a very good reason why I didn't think of bringing Javik along. I cannot fucking stand Javik. Javik is one of the most unfunny, annoying, obnoxious assholes that I have ever come across in a video game, and that says a lot coming from a game with Kai Lang in it. His one joke is threatening to kill people in overtly detailed fashion, and I am convinced that the only people who find this funny are 50-year-olds from Wisconsin who are super big on Dick Cheney. There was never a single mission in the game where I thought to myself, I would really like to hear Javik's take on this, because I am certain that I could have recreated all of his dialogue out of a shitty character AI. So yeah, that's why I didn't bring him on the mission with me. Once Shepard enters the temple, he finds a bunch of researchers with their throats slit, but before he could deliberate on that, he is distracted by a presence felt from within the main statue, namely a Prothean presence. After activating some surrounding beacons, the statue crumbles away to reveal that it was actually a Prothean beacon this entire time. Given what was presented about both the Protheans and the Asari in the previous games, I thought this was actually a pretty neat twist at first. Without the Scyther, the visions that were transmitted by the Protheans would seem jumbled and incoherent to any other species. So when the Asari, in their prehistoric state, first interacted with the Prothean beacon, they mistook the visions as the teachings of the Siari god named Athame, thus why the ensuing Temple of Athame is built on the side of a Prothean beacon. This would also explain why Thessia fell to the Reapers so quickly, even though they are the most advanced race in the galaxy, as the presence of the Reapers coincides with the preachings of the Orovors, which were a group of gods that threatened the Asari. This, in turn, led to many Asari believing that Doomsday has arrived, and quickly succumbing to the Reapers. Okay, that was a pretty big stretch, but it's a testament to how good the twist was if it allowed players to connect the dots in a manner that doesn't completely shatter the established lore. This twist also causes an inner turmoil within Liara, as she must come to terms with the fact that the two most important things in her life, her faith in the Siari goddess and the study of the Protheans, are more intertwined than she could have possibly believed, and must decide which mattered more to her. Overall, this was a twist that was set up throughout the trilogy, made logical sense, and presents new revelations for the player and new dilemmas for the characters to face. For the first time in a long time, the main plot of Mass Effect actually had good writing. I couldn't believe it. And then I replayed the mission with Javik. And then Javik said this.
But why hide it?
The answer is obvious. Power and influence. Your people are holding the knowledge of my race for their own gain.
That can't be. I can't believe my people would keep this a secret.
A beacon like this could explain why Asari are so advanced.
This temple is thousands of years old. Time enough to make serious progress.
That doesn't make it true.
You can't keep denying reality, Asari. Even a small amount of data would give your species an edge. Or are you insulted that your government didn't involve you?
See if I snuck up in your bedroom, touch you while you sleep.
The main reason I wanted to make this video is because I wanted to offer a perspective of the series that I haven't seen many express. Whenever Mass Effect is mentioned within conversation or across articles or forums or YouTube, you hear a lot about how truly awful the ending is, how the Dark Energy plot was so much better, how they wanted to punt that little fuck Starchild through 1,000 suns. However, I believe that outside of the ending of the franchise, way too many fans tend to just take most of Mass Effect at face value. And this right here, this truly moronic line by Javik, has to be the most egregious example, because if you put at least an inkling, a modicum of thought towards what Javik just said, you would realize that the Asari practically stumbled across a Prothean disk with a VI inside that told them there are a legion of hyper-intelligent killer robots that will brainwash and exterminate you in 30,000 years, and the only way to stop them is to construct this giant kill switch that will shut all of them down. Here is a step-by-step guide on how to build the Crucible, as well as the exact coordinates of the giant space station that you will attach to this weapon. And the Asari's response to this was, golly gee wilkers, this will surely boost our economy! The Asari purposefully sat on information regarding the extinction of all intelligent life in the galaxy because, I don't know, the Asari are whores and the government is corrupt or something. Speaking of government, what do you mean, your government? Thessia is a collection of Asari republics that are mostly city-states. We know this because this was explicitly stated in the Codex of Mass Effect 2. Hell, the damn planet doesn't even have any politicians. The citizens just vote on whatever they want. Who the fuck is keeping this a secret? The Asari ambassadors? For 30,000 years? That's a mighty long time. Is there some sort of secret society within Thessia? How can the Justicar have no idea about this? Did the matriarchs of Athane keep this a secret? If that's the case, how did Liara never make the connection that the Protheans share similarities with her goddess? Isn't that what she's been researching for the past 50 years? Are you seriously that desperate to put this in the game, Mac Walters? Was this really such an important part of your game that you were willing to annihilate your own lore for it, Mac Walters?
Oh, but if the Asari couldn't understand the VI because they didn't have the cipher like Shepard did.
Well, your squad mates certainly didn't have trouble understanding Vigil and Ilos, didn't they? Besides, if the Asari needed the cipher just to activate Vendetta, then the Protheans must be completely brain dead, because if the cipher makes virtual intelligence units believe that you are a Prothean, then why would the Protheans only allow themselves to activate VI if they placed it all over the galaxy with the purpose of helping developing species? Sure, there is the Thorian, but that giant fucker just absorbed the minds of Protheans after they died and barged its way through their collective consciousness without them even knowing about its existence. The Protheans essentially made a lock without ever bothering to make a key. Well, the Protheans were too cocky and thought that they would survive the Reaper attack. Okay. So why did they keep the identity of the Reapers as well as their plan to defeat them completely impenetrable, yet Liara just found the literal blueprint to the Crucible on Mars?
Yeah, that's true.
It may sound like I'm mad, but trust me, I'm not mad. Whenever I'm mad, I print out this picture of John Blood and chew on it like it's tobacco dip. But even if Vendetta was not on Thessia, this would still be one of the stupidest twists I've ever encountered, because it means that the Asari were only considered as the most advanced life form in the galaxy because the Protheans just dumped a bunch of stuff on their planet. Let's just forget that Thessia is naturally rich in element 0 to the point that almost all Asari are born with biotic capabilities, or that the Asari are monogendered, or that the Asari are parthenogenic, or that they live to well over 1,000. No, they became the most powerful species in the galaxy because their sugar daddies put their name in the will. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? Yeah, Javik has a line where he implies that the Protheans would come down to Thessia for sexual favors from the Asari, which... Dude, you know that the Reapers didn't kill the Asari for a reason, right? You were practically having sex with monkeys. You could tell that this was an intentional change by the way that the game points the finger at the Asari and calls them out for keeping the fact that they hoarded a bunch of Prothean ruins a secret. But is it really that much of a secret? I mean, the Asari discovered the Citadel. They were the first species to experience Mass Effect. They founded the Citadel Council. If all the remaining species in the Milky Way were of Ooga Booga caveman status when the Reapers finally left, then it would only make sense that the one who accomplishes the most with that technology so early on were supplied with the most technology. This isn't the hardest thing to decipher. I am aware that the Asari made rules for all council races to share their technology amongst each other, so why did they deliberately break those rules? What more can be revealed from these caches and artifacts to constitute this grand conspiracy? Other than the end times, I mean. Are the Asari just power-hungry liars? If so, why are you showing this at the tail end of the campaign, knowing damn well that you are never going to elaborate on this? Is this another racism thing? I thought the first time was a mistake, now it's kind of worrying. This just reeks of the writer's room of ME2 and 3, looking at the depiction of the Asari in ME1 and thinking, these chicks are way too goody two-shoes, make them edgy, make them kill people, make them twerk and eat hot chip and lie and rearrange people's brain chemicals to make them seem more attractive. LOL, why did they have boobies? XD. Don't get me wrong, I do find some of these new perspectives on the Asari to be really entertaining, and while I do find others to be dumb and pointless, they are mostly harmless. However, this specific scene on Thessia perfectly showcases just how cruel and mean-spirited the later installments of Mass Effect have been towards the Asari, tearing down intricate world building and paving citywide plot holes just to make them the butt of the joke. This unnecessary cruelty that persists throughout Mass Effect 3 is also what makes Javik such an insufferable jerk. That might sound childish to some, but the way that this guy is propped up in the game is utterly ridiculous. Every conversation that Javik is involved in can be boiled down to him making some unfunny racist joke that the other character simply doesn't respond to, or Javik making the dumbest possible statement regarding an event only to be completely vindicated by the writing staff. He never makes mistakes, he is never proven wrong, nobody ever calls him out on his terrible character traits, his views are never challenged and his flaws are never highlighted. His big tragic backstory is his crew becoming indoctrinated, which prompts him to track them all down and slit their throats. That's how it's described. He doesn't put them out of their misery or any other sort of grounded description. He trekked all over the galaxy to watch the blood pour from their necks and the life leave their eyes. Jesus Christ, this reads like a parody of a Rob Liefeld character. And I get it, Javik is supposed to be an asshole. He is the last warrior of the Prothean Empire that enslaved all other races in his cycle. He isn't exactly the most virtuous person in the Milky Way. Javik is meant to represent the pessimistic outlook on the state of the galaxy that a majority of Mass Effect characters, and possibly Shepard himself, possessed at the beginning of the series, being cagey and untrustworthy towards all other species. After all, there was a reason why the Protheans were defeated by the Reapers. Except there is no reason why the Protheans lost to the Reapers, other than that the Reapers were just so powerful and indoctrination was just too strong. There is no fatal flaw to the Protheans' game plan except for the Prothean cipher stuff, which I consider to be more of a plot hole than anything. This is BioWare inadvertently telling the player that there is no incentive in questioning Javik's imperialistic beliefs. Hell, you're encouraged to agree with him because the Protheans were this close to deploying the Crucible. They would have won if it wasn't for those pesky Reapers. The reason why this cycle was the one to build the Crucible and defeat the Reapers was pure coincidence, and not at all the fact that all the races in the galaxy cooperated in the construction of the bloody thing instead of waging wars all the time. There's so little subtext in this game that if it wasn't for the Tachanka arc, he could have convinced me that this was written by a 13-year-old. I must reiterate that my problem with Javik isn't just because the game considers him to be in the right, although that does play a major part in the matter. It's the fact that before you can probe him with any insightful dialogue, he tells you to throw yourself out of the airlock, the laugh track plays, and he winks at the camera as the screen fades to the next scene. He shows no respect to neither the characters nor the galaxy at large, and we are forced to treat him like some pivotal character because he called Liara by her name once, despite treating her like shit the entire game. but the culmination of my issues are displayed in his ending. If you make all the decisions that lead to interactions with Javik, pick him up on Eden Prime, take him to the Citadel, bring him with you on Thessia, touch his gay little shard, everything. If you talk to him while in London, he will reveal that after the Reapers are defeated, he will travel back to where he slayed his comrades and commit suicide. This true ending sees him refusing to come to terms with the error of his ways and choosing to take his own life instead. Kai Lane cops all the flack for being BioWare's obvious original character donut steal, but Javik's the real edgelord of Mass Effect. I don't use this term lightly, but Javik is the honest to god definition of a Gary Stu in gaming. A stuck-up, pathetic waste of hard drive space who does nothing but sit around and make jokes at the expense of much better characters while hiding behind writers who will actively tear the story asunder and make their world less fleshed out just to accommodate his shitty existence. Get bent, you absolute tool. Die. Shepard activates the Prothean VI known as Vendetta, and despite my grievances with this mission, Vendetta actually relays one good piece of writing. He tells Shepard that in addition to planning the Crucible, the Protheans also found that throughout all feasible cycles, there has been a constant pattern of biological evolution, technological advancement, galactic conflict, and subsequent disintegration of galactic society. What perpetrates this recurrent cycle is ultimately unknown, and the Reapers are not its cause, but rather its servant. This line illustrates that after all this time, all the hot dogging and grandstanding, all the monotonous vague threats and using indoctrination to keep the player at a distance, BioWare finally allude to the Reapers having some method to their madness. Sure, this is being dealt out right before the third act of the final game in the trilogy, but this is clearly building towards a grand revelation that will be disclosed by the game's end. This introduces a moral quandary that the player will have to reflect on in the ending, and finally allows for a sense of intrigue to be featured in the main story for the first time since what lies beyond the Omega 4 relay all the way back in ME2. Unfortunately, it is within this interaction with Vendetta where this is revealed.
What happened to the Crucible in your time? Why didn't the Protheans deploy it?
We were sabotaged from within. A splinter group argued we should dominate the Reapers rather than destroy them. It fractured our order of battle. Later, we discovered the Separatists were indoctrinated. I always suspected as much.
And now we're facing the same problem.
Forget what I said about the Council in Mass Effect 2. This right here is the worst line in the entirety of Mass Effect. You do remember that whole tirade I went on about how having the Elusive Man become indoctrinated ruins his purpose as both a character and a thematic through point, right? Well, Mac Walters decided to one-up himself and tell the player directly, hey, don't worry about the Elusive Man. There are plenty of other people who wanted to control the Reapers in all the previous cycles, and every single one of them was also indoctrinated. Between this, Cerberus and Saren, it has become BioWare's mission to make sure that absolutely nobody ever diverges outside the arbitrary good-evil guidelines that they set in the first game. It doesn't matter how abhorrent you are. If you want to destroy the Reapers, you are a good guy. If you don't want to destroy the Reapers, it's because you are a Reaper. You may say that there is no correlation between wanting to control the Reapers and being a goon for them, but when the game itself tells the player as bluntly as possible that every other person who has thought that way has been indoctrinated, then there is very little for the player to discern here. Indoctrination is no longer a plot device, it has become a plot virus. The only thing that is being controlled by the Reapers is this story as we plot along towards this one-dimensional conflict between the player and a group of beings whose fundamental premise is conceptually broken. Mass Effect 3 feels like a crossfic where actual rich, entertaining characters from much better pieces of media are thrown together in order to take on this overpowered enemy that this 16-year-old author is writing on the fly. Speaking of fanfic, here comes Kai Lang. Up until recently, BioWare was a developer that had a lot of goodwill among fans. If BioWare was in the opening title sequence when you booted up the game, then you knew that it was going to be quality. I think this was where the goodwill died. Let's be honest. Is this a Make-A-Wish thing? Like an enter a contest and your character will be in Mass Effect 3 sort of thing? Casey Hudson can just lie and say that it is, I would have understood. Kai Lang brings out a hologram of the Elusive Man so BioWare can rub salt into the fans' wounds by reminding them how they completely wasted Martin Sheen. After Tim bitches about how he totally isn't indoctrinated for a while, Shepard fights Kai Lang and gets the absolute piss knocked out of him. Secret Agent Cold Steel steals Vendetta, blows up the temple, and we are left with the obligatory second act crisis as Thessia falls because...
Bitches be shopping!
See if I snuck a thing.
Something you may hear about Mass Effect 3 is that it is actually a really good game until the last 15 minutes. But does this really look like a good game to you? This one scene embodies every major shortcoming in the franchise. Unnecessary retcons, preposterous set pieces, preferential treatment of certain characters at the expense of others, and regressing characters to someone that would only seem like the same character to someone who has never played the games. But above all else, this scene highlights how much indoctrination just does not work. You can argue that they could have simply not made Cerberus indoctrinated, but while true, that only raises the question of how can you fight the Reapers without becoming indoctrinated, which is a question that BioWare is incapable of answering. This was Event Horizon for Mass Effect, a point of no return where no matter what the writing staff tried to accomplish, it would certainly only end in disaster. But nevertheless, they still tried to make something out of this shit heap. Oh boy, did they try. The specialist of the Normandy, Samantha Trainer, managed to track Kai Lang, which leads Shepard to the headquarters of the Elusive Man. Actually, it leads to the Cerberus facility on Horizon, but that mission was so boring that I forgot everything about it. When we make our way to Tim's $300 IKEA chair, he reveals his true form, as a hologram. He and Shepard do their typical bickering unless you brought Edie with you. In that case, Tim addresses how Edie chose to control Eva Core's body rather than destroy it, which would be a good point. We boot Vendetta back up as the VI reveals that the catalyst needed to complete the Crucible resides in the Citadel. However, Tim has assisted the Reapers with taking over the Citadel off screen, and the Citadel has been moved to Earth to transport the humans to the Citadel for process. Yeah, I got nothing. We're in full ruler cool mode here. We finally kill Kai Lang and head to London to plan a full frontal assault to capture the Citadel and implant the Crucible with Anderson. This final mission is actually quite nice. To be fair, it is really hard to muck up a final battle like this. Just have everyone come together, get their shine, and say their goodbyes for the franchise. Sprinkle waves of Reaper abominations around the place, and hey presto, you have a great final mission. Shepard finally makes his way to the giant beam in the sky that is transporting humans. I'm starting to think that this huge assault was unnecessary when all you have to do is just sneak your way through the pile of dead bodies being loaded into the laser and just ride your way up. But then we wouldn't have fun playing Bull Rush with Harbinger. Unfortunately, Shepard gets tagged, so he's out for a little bit, but Shepard is immune to any sort of sedative, so he gets right back up. Dick Leroy Jenkins sacrifices himself, Shepard has the final boss fight with Marauder shields, and up to the Citadel he goes. Shepard ends up somewhere on the Citadel. The walls keep shifting to accommodate for the Reaper making machine that has just been installed on the Citadel. Why are you laughing? Stop laughing. After stumbling his way through what seems like the Citadel Tower, Shepard finds Captain Anderson at a control panel and their bodies are taken over by the Elusive Man through indoctrination? That's the only explanation here. How the fuck did he control both Shepard and Anderson? He could have possessed Shepard since he was partially synthetic, even though that would go against what he said in the previous game, but Anderson? What is he controlling? His hip replacement? I love this part where Shepard points a gun at Anderson and all Anderson can do is go, no, to do it. No, to do it. No, stop, what are you doing? No, stop that. Whatever, Anderson shoots Shepard and we just do a repeat of what happened with Saren. You had Mark Meir, Keith David and Martin Sheen in the same scene and this was the material you gave them. What a waste. Shepard opens the arms of the Citadel and Hackett attaches the Crucible. As this happens, Shepard and Anderson sit down and talk. Just talk. Part of me views this particular line where Anderson, with his last breath, tells Shepard that he is proud of him as the true ending of Mass Effect. Not to say that Mass Effect 3 would have been deemed good if the credits just started rolling after this scene. I still would have made a video on why indoctrination sucks and said, oh, I thought this was an RPG and just left it at that. But this interaction with Anderson, two men on the brink of death just having a talk about their children, was the last glimmer of light that made the franchise so great. The Reapers never made Mass Effect. They were a major part of the world, but they were not supposed to be what made Mass Effect special. It was the notion that the Reapers were supposed to be the biggest and the baddest and the scariest that made the narrative of the games become so broken, both structurally and creatively. In truth, the reason why Mass Effect was so well regarded despite what is about to transpire is because of Captain Anderson, someone who was level-headed and almost always made the right call but was never self-righteous or condescending. It's because of the elusive man, the personification of an enigma whose poise and confidentiality made him an indomitable force in the Milky Way. It was because of Garrus and Tali and Rex and Liara and Ashley and Kaidan and Jack and Fuck You and Miranda and Grunt and Morton and Joker and Edie and Die in a Fire. This isn't just the corny, it's the friends you made along the way excuse, but it's the intricate tales that surround those characters. Hell, I was more enthralled with Jacob's loyalty mission than any other point in the main story in the games. Implementing an antagonist that is this poorly planned out is a disservice to all the characters BioWare brought to life, the books upon books of lore and adventures that could be conceived within this world, and the players who put hours of their lives into completing this trilogy. And it was all because Drew Karpyshyn decided to write a villain who has mind control. Shepard takes the Codivator up to space and comes face to face with the Star Child. His real name is the Catalyst, but everyone just calls him the Star Child. His real name? Their real name? It's like this weird hologram thing, whatever. This lost little boy is a sentient AI that represents the collective consciousness of the Reapers, in addition to all the ancient civilizations that the Reapers have harvested. This little guy reveals that, shockingly, the Catalyst and therefore the Reapers were not in fact existent since the dawn of time. The Catalyst was created by a super ancient species known as the Leviathan as a means to improving relations between organic life and their synthetic creations. After extensive analysis, the Catalyst concluded that conflict between organic and synthetic life is inevitable and will lead to the destruction of all life in the galaxy. To counteract this, the Catalyst slaughtered the Leviathan and processed them in order to construct the Reapers, which the Catalyst would use to preserve the knowledge and consciousness of the races that they have decimated. They would leave primitive races be until they have evolved to what the Catalyst believes is the pinnacle of advanced life, where they are harvested and converted into more Reapers. The Catalyst continued with this cycle as an experiment in order to find the ultimate answer to the conflict between organics and synthetics. And with Shepard being living proof that this experiment won't work anymore, the Catalyst can now answer that question. From here, Shepard is presented with three choices, the first being to use the Crucible to destroy the Reapers once and for all. However, this will cause all other synthetic life in the galaxy to perish, including Shepard himself, since his body is partially synthetic. The Catalyst has been aware of the Crucible for quite some time and has attempted to demolish the blueprint for it, but it slipped right under their noses. Funny that. The second choice is to utilize the energy emitted from the Crucible to seize control of the Reapers. This would cause Shepard's material form and connection to his humanity to dissipate and become the true leader of the Reapers. The Catalyst notes that while this is the elusive man's ultimate goal, he could never achieve it because he was indoctrinated. Yet there is a third option: synthesis. This would involve Shepard infusing himself with the energy blast that the Crucible will transmit, which would merge the consciousness of organics and the advancement of synthetics into one species. The Catalyst mentions that they have tried to synthesize organics and synthetics before, but failed as organics were not ready to look like TNA Jeff Hardy for the rest of their lives, so the Catalyst concluded that this process could not be forced and must require the authorization of an organic being. Starchild tells Shepard to make his choice, the platforms raise, and oh boy, where do I begin? Well, first off,
we have no beginning, we have no end, we are infinite.
This nigga was clearly lying.
Okay, that was a low blow. I know it wasn't Mac Walters' fault that his fellow writers on OMI-1 gave him absolutely nothing to work with when it came to the Reapers. Obviously, a retcon was bound to happen because Lord knows the Reapers needed it. However, the backstory that the Mac story gave them is questionable, to say the least. For starters, what does harvesting do? People get melted down and shoved into giant robots, then what? How is this considered salvation from imminent doom? Is there some sort of virtual afterlife for the victims? There is no convincing argument as to why being harvested by the Reapers is preferable to just living your life, other than the possibility that you may be killed by a robot in the future. Bitch, I'm getting killed by a robot right now. I kind of appreciate the writers for attempting to steer outside of the murder hobo tendencies that Carpathian's Reapers had, but they reveal way too little in way too little time here. Also, if ancient species are being preserved inside of Reapers, then why would the Catalyst send out said Reapers to capture and harvest other life? If Shepard blows up a Reaper, then wouldn't that mean that Shepard effectively committed a genocide? Wouldn't be the first time. Haha, ha 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 ha. Christ. The motivation of the Catalyst is fairly weak too, mostly because their concern with the conflict between organics and synthetics isn't really about anything tangible or concrete. We're just told that the synthetics evolved to become better than organics, and then they start fighting in every cycle. There is no underlying issue. It's not about synthetics killing off organics like the Geth in ME1, or organics suppressing synthetics like the Geth in ME3. They just kill each other because that's what they do and nothing can ever prevent it. It doesn't convince the player that the Catalyst is truly a non-biased partisan in this whole ordeal, who is just doing what they deem to be the optimal solution. It doesn't help that the Catalyst says that they harvest both organic and synthetic life, yet the Reapers are never shown trying to conquer the Geth. In fact, they attempt to cooperate with them in order to take over the Citadel. In addition to this, they never address conflicts among organics such as the Rachni Wars, or the Krogan Rebellions, or the Skillian Blitz, or the First Contact War, or the Terminus systems. I mean, did you see the guys in the last cycle? They were full-blown imperialists, and you're worried about something that has only happened once in recorded history? That's when you go, alright, everybody get out of the gene pool and start massacring anything that has access to a mass relay? That kinda sounds like a synthetic bias to me. You see, the Catalyst keeps saying that everyone knew about the conflict between organics and synthetics and how it keeps on happening. Apparently everyone knew except for the player. The Morning War is practically already over by the time the Reapers arrived. The Geth were fully content with living in the Perseus Vale. Nobody had seen or heard from the Geth in 200 years, and the only reason they left was because Sovereign convinced them to. The Protheans fought an unnamed synthetic enemy but absolutely demolished them before the Reapers could even get there because they colonized every hospitable planet and race in the galaxy. Jarvik informed Shepard of an ancient AI known as the Zartil who enslaved their masters, but would go on to reveal that they were actually being controlled by the Reapers this entire time, because everybody knows that the best way to write an antagonist is to involve them in every storyline you can think of. Outside of some rogue AIs that the player can swiftly take care of, there is only one legitimate case of human AI conflict in the entirety of the series that warrants the Reaper's presence, and the MC has the power to resolve it. Instead of showing the conflict between organics and synthetics, BioWare creates this little dweeb who just notifies the player that this is a thing now and apparently always has been. This thing that happened? Oh, it happens every single time. We try to rectify this, but we have always failed. I am super old and super powerful, therefore you must take my word as gospel. Always, always, always. It's always, always. It's such a hard pill to swallow, especially if the player went through the effort to repair the mends between the Geth and the Quarians. Before I tear these endings asunder, I just want to get a superficial critique out of the way. I'm a believer that it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and I cannot believe that BioWare had the gall to have this little twerp shut down anything that Shepard tries to say. Listen to what this little shit says when Shepard tells it that he doesn't want to become a Reaper.
We help them ascend, so they can make way for new life, storing the old life in Reaper form.
I think we'd rather keep our own form.
No, you can't.
No. Just no. I have never seen a Deus Ex Machina that stonewalls the player this much before. I am simply baffled as to why Casey Hudson is so adamant on having humans versus AI as the main theme of the games when it is only ever presented as a neat side mission. This is something you would expect from Bethesda or Season 3 of Telltale's Walking Dead. Alright, now it's time to dive into the crux of this issue, the endings, starting with the Control ending. This is the ending that the Elusive Man would have picked, and that's why it is bad. The Synthesis ending, on the other hand, presents the player with a myriad of I'm just joshing, let's go over Control some more. The Control ending is the only ending that actually does what it says on the tin. No caveat, no twists, no contrivance. Shepard puts his hands on the handlebars, and he takes control of the Reapers. Depending on if you are a good guy or a bad boy, Shepard will either order the Reapers to leave the Milky Way be or rule over the galaxy with an iron fist. BioWare wasn't exactly subtle with this parallel. Before the big decision, the player is shown visions of Captain Anderson and the Elusive Man picking Destroy and Control respectively. However, the writing team cannot properly highlight this connection in the way that it is intended because they have spent a good portion of this story telling the player that not only was Tim indoctrinated by the Reapers, but so was everyone else who has tried to control the Reapers throughout history. So if the poster boy of this belief was brainwashed along with everyone else who has ever prescribed to it, then why would Shepard do the same? Explain, Starchild.
So, the Elusive Man was right after all.
Yes, but he could never have taken control, because we already controlled him.
But I can.
You know, I believe that Mac Walters cops a lot of flack for how poorly ME3 was written. In truth, a lot of the criticism deserves to be aimed at the entire writing staff because they clearly have not communicated throughout the entire writing process. You have one guy saying that trying to control the Reapers will always lead to you becoming indoctrinated, and we have another guy saying that the Elusive Man couldn't control the Reapers because he was indoctrinated. If you are going to spend the entirety of ME3 indicating that the main villain of the franchise is deranged and should not be consulted with, then maybe don't offer the player an option that is incredibly similar to the fate of said villain and go, oh, don't worry, you could actually control the Reapers this whole time. All those other guys who did just weren't as strong as you. Look, the controls are right there, you can go ahead and take them. What's the old saying? You can't have your cake and eat it too? The most frustrating thing about this ending is that outside of the game inadvertently telling you to not choose this one, the control ending is actually quite serviceable. Due to its simplicity, it is the only ending that receives amicable build-up as the series goes on, and the pros and cons of this choice are actually dwelled on. Mass Effect 2 goes through the effort of deliberating whether it is moral to utilize Reaper technology to gain an upper hand on them, considering that the Reapers are indeed made of people. In Mass Effect 3, the writers at least try to bring up the ethical quandary of taking away the power to eradicate all life in the galaxy and gifting it to one specific person, but that argument becomes mere window dressing to the actual weakness that the game wants to discuss, which is if you do it, you got cooties. Otherwise, control is a perfectly valid option. You may be looking at me sideways and thinking that I'm indoctrinated, but that reaction is the exact reason why indoctrination is a bad thing. BioWare ran headfirst into the realization that indoctrination provided no thematic purpose and only served to turn people into Reaper goons, yet continued barreling along as if nothing happened. It is because of this ineptitude that the only ending that actually feels like a proper ending to the franchise has become besmirched into being the designated bad ending. The Synthesis ending, on the other hand, presents the player with a myriad of problems hiding under the bonnet rather than the large flashing warning sign that was the Control ending. In the Synthesis ending, we are told that Shepard is able to fuse organic and synthetic DNA together by shooting his DNA across the galaxy. This will Stop laughing! Stop laughing! This will in turn alter the matrix of all organic life in the galaxy and have all organic people fully versed in all forms of advanced technology. Nothing will happen to synthetic people, they'll just gain a better understanding of organics because they are now one and the same, and synthetics can all become human. I don't know, don't think about it that hard. No, you know what, screw it, let's think about it that hard, because Lord knows BioWare didn't. How is the Crucible able to affect organic life? Is this a genophage sort of thing? I've been quite lenient when it comes to the pseudoscience of Mass Effect. I can buy humans discovering an element that allows them to travel faster than the speed of light. I understand dark energy as a concept, but I need something more to chew on than the Crucible just releasing a vague spurt of energy that alters genetic structure to the molecular level. It doesn't help that nothing about the Crucible has been foreshadowed or explained, so we don't even know what it does until the final 10 minutes of the game. On top of all that, the Catalyst adds that they have attempted to enforce the synthesis of organics and synthetics before, but could not because humanity was not ready. What do you mean you tried it before? Has the Crucible already been used? Did somebody 450,000 years ago activate the Crucible, choose synthesis, go to jump into the beam and just fell off the Citadel? Starchild said that this was the first time that the Crucible has been activated. So how did the Catalyst attempt to synthesize organics and Hasn't it gone through this little kid's thick head that the reason why organics don't want to synthesize is because there is absolutely no benefit from becoming a Reaper? But whatever, if Shepard goes into the beam, then everyone becomes a Reaper, but in a good way, as the Milky Way becomes one big race with the same genetic makeup and all conflict is dissolved. This is what the ending of Steven Universe looks like to the people who only interact with Steven Universe from video essays. This ending is a cop-out. Let's call a spade a spade. It's a total cop-out. This is the unequivocal perfect ending to the developer. Everybody in the galaxy is united as one. We get these cue card slides of each character in each race smiling, which tells the audience that they ran out of budget more than anything. It does have the Citadel explode for some reason, but it's probably for aesthetic value anyway. It's not like everyone is still alive on the Citadel. The mere existence of this ending makes the other two superfluous when you could avoid any sort of gloomy outcome in favor for one where everyone joins hands by the campfire, huff ayahuasca and sing Kumbaya. There is no internal dilemma for the player to dwell over when you could just jump into this beam and solve all the problems in the galaxy. A grade A, pure, unadulterated Deus Ex Machina, make no mistake about it. If it looks, swims, and quacks like a duck, then it ain't no fucking chicken. I gotta say, for a happily ever after, this is a pretty shitty ever after. Everyone possessing a shared consciousness as well as full intelligence doesn't really solve any problems. As a matter of fact, it might have caused a hell of a lot more. I don't want to participate in a democratic vote that forces me to enjoy Bloodborne. I don't need to explain to you why sharing the same consciousness as a lifeless body isn't exactly the type of thing I would classify as the good ending. Nobody else knows about what happened in the Crucible, so to the average Joe, one day you're finding a bunch of husks on Earth, and the next you're like, yeah, this is my mate Hamish from work, he's so funny, he's an ale supporter, we give him so much shit for it. Or it's like, oh, looks like you're copping the wooden spoon again, and he's all like, or at least I want to say that's why it's bad, but honestly, I think whoever wrote this completely forgot that the Geth shared a neural network. They just saw the end of the Rannoch arc and thought, oh, that's good, why can't we all just be friends, guys? While being ignorant of the most important proponent of the Geth as a species. I genuinely believe that BioWare didn't mean to place such ominous undertones in the synthesis ending, they just made everyone the Milky Way green now. And all for what? Just so Joker can have his pelvis shattered into a bajillion pieces? While the Control ending is a fine ending in a vacuum, but is preemptively ruined by context, the Synthesis ending just seems off from the start. Its mere presence undermines the other two endings as everything that could go right in the galaxy does go right. This could be the right ending in the right story, but in Mass Effect, it just doesn't feel right. This ending leaves the player with a weird taste in their mouths from the moment they pick it. Such a why did I put that word in the script? Such a sacchariferous outcome for a premise that doesn't sound all that enticing. It's the good ending, but it's too good. And in a series where the player is taught to not trust everything they are told, many became skeptical, to say the least. This is where we get into the indoctrination theory. For those who don't know what the indoctrination theory is, it is the belief that BioWare had hid a far more sinister meaning behind the ending sequence of Mass Effect 3 that provides closure to the series. The theory goes that after Shepard is hit with Harbinger's beam during the rush towards the Citadel, he enters a dreamlike state and everything afterwards takes place within his yeah, okay, I know it's the whole it was all a dream thing and it's super played out, but that's just how it is. This theory suggests that Shepard had been indoctrinated when he interacted with Object Rho during the Arrival DLC, and that the Crucible that Shepard activates doesn't decide the fate of the galaxy, but whether Shepard would succumb to indoctrination or reject it. The catalyst is actually an avatar of the Reapers that is trying to manipulate Shepard into falling under their command. If Shepard selects Control or Synthesis, then Shepard accepts his indoctrination and he is shown visions of the galaxy living in peace, although he has most certainly doomed their existence. If Shepard chooses destroy, then he overpowers the influence of the Reapers on his mind and wakes up amidst the rubble on Earth. While I don't agree with this ending and its message, I do respect the level of dedication that those who formulated this theory poured into it. It covers a lot of inconsistencies regarding the final part of the game, such as why the Citadel looks completely different than any other time we see it, how Anderson was able to reach the Citadel before Shepard, why the Star Child takes the appearance of the little boy at the beginning of the game, and most importantly, why Shepard survives in the Destroy ending. It clearly has more thought and detail than BioWare put into the actual ending. This isn't supposed to be an insult, BioWare admitted this under their own volition. I don't want this to be mistaken as me discrediting the work of others, but rather advising them on why this theory is misguided and unwarranted. This is not me debunking the indoctrination theory, this is me critiquing it. Let's say for a moment that the indoctrination theory is proven to be true. Shepard rejects his indoctrination attempt, the Reapers are destroyed, and he wakes up from his illusions on Earth. Shepard alludes to the catalyst actually being a last-ditch attempt from the Reapers to indoctrinate him, and he lives happily ever after with his legally questionable girlfriend. With all that being said, the question I pose to you is this. What was the point? What was the point in all this? What did you, the player, learn as you played through the ending? Per the bindings of the indoctrination theory, Tim's attempt to control Shepard, Anderson telling Shepard that he is proud of him, and both of their subsequent deaths would have never happened, as the entire scene took place in a dream that Shepard had after being struck by Harbinger's beam. The entire backstory of the Reapers, as well as their motives and the whole organic-synthetic conflict, is completely dismissed because this ending requires players to subscribe to the belief that the Reapers are merely trying to manipulate Shepard into doing what they want. Even Shepard dying would be rendered redundant, as he will be brought back to life under the right circumstances. The only two tidbits that I actually believe are neat is the idea that the confrontation with the catalyst is taking place in Shepard's mind rather than some giant mechanism that the game has never alluded to, and the idea that Shepard is the catalyst, not the Star Child. However, the theory overcorrects this by having Shepard be some chosen one fulfilling an ancient prophecy, and the Reapers were just obsessed with him throughout the trilogy. And if fangirling over some random human named Barnaby doesn't kill the mystique of the Reapers, but giving them a simple reason for their actions does, then maybe their priorities aren't straight. Nothing regarding the status quo of Mass Effect changes due to the events of this ending. If anything, the status quo regresses, as Vendetta has revealed that there is something bigger at play here that is motivating the Reapers, and by never allowing them to break their typecast of spooky, omnipotent monsters that kill for no discernible reason from the first game, you are purposefully condemning your own narrative for proposing a conclusion that isn't just summed up by Reapers arrive, fight Reapers, defeat Reapers, the end. I don't care about how many plot holes it fills. If the indoctrination theory doesn't have anything worthwhile to say, then why would I want it? The endings of Mass Effect are unequivocally shite, but their lack of clarification is secretly their biggest strength. None of the generally accepted consequences of Shepard's decisions can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It is implied that Shepard will eventually be overthrown by the Reapers if you choose control, but in that ending, Shepard is in complete control over his actions. It is implied that destroying the Reapers would not stop the cycle of constant extinction and may in fact preserve that cycle, but in that ending, everybody seems content with the complete and utter death of all synthetic life. It is implied that everyone just turns into husks in the synthesis ending, but in that ending, everyone lives in prosperity. These endings are purposefully presented this way because BioWare believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that each ending is considered a sensible choice, even if the player believes or knows otherwise. The developers do not want the player to judge the endings by whether it fits into the established lore and themes of the game or by the potential outcomes of their choices, but rather by the ideals of their version of Shepard. This is not how you should construct an ending to your fictional works at all, but BioWare still had the right idea for a video game of this magnitude that contains multiple endings. After all, Mass Effect 3 is still a role-playing game. In contrast, the indoctrination theory turns the ending of Mass Effect from a series of choices to a pop quiz where selecting the wrong answer leads to the bad ending, and picking the correct answer rewards the player by reviving Shepard and not requiring the player to think any further about why they made their decision. It causes the player to just say, "Oh, you pulled a fast one on us, good job BioWare," and then proceed to never think about the villain, the game, or the franchise ever again. Shouting "it was all a dream" at the end of the game is a bigger cop-out than the synthesis ending could ever be. Lastly, we have the final and most popular ending, Destroy. Shepard can finally achieve what he has sought out to do for the entirety of the trilogy and eliminate the Reapers once and for all. However, the destruction of the Reapers comes at a price. Since the Crucible quote-unquote does not discriminate, the ensuing energy blast will also eliminate all synthetic life in the Milky Way. Among those who are killed include EDI, the Geth, and Shepard. You may think my main issue with this ending would be characters like EDI and Legion being killed off screen, and honestly, you would be 120% right. Why the fuck did they do this? You choose synthesis, and the Catalyst has the ability to bestow everybody in the galaxy with infinite knowledge and wisdom, but if you choose to destroy the Reapers, yeah, we can't do that. If you want to do that, you have to kill off all synthetic life forms in the galaxy. Yeah, sorry. Some have tried to attribute this to the design of the Crucible and that the only way that it could deactivate the Reapers would be to launch a giant EMP blast that would consequently shut down all synthetics. But when the Crucible is activated, Shepard can only destroy the Reapers by shooting a big collection of fiber optic cables. Do these cables contain the life source of all synthetic beings or some shit? Is this their blue box? If so, why is it stored inside the Crucible, which has only existed for 6 months? I feel compelled to point out this otherwise minor detail because it drastically emphasizes how plain stupid of a decision it is to have the Destroy ending kill off all synthetics. This is clearly something they wanted to happen. It's not like it was patched out in the extended cut so people would actually choose it. I would say that I want to be a fly on the wall for when they decided to put that in the story, but this is the type of decision that slips through everyone's cracks as nobody behind the production of the game gave this important detail that teeters the existence of an entire race over a spike pit any thought. How else would you have an antagonist whose primary motivation is humans and robots don't mix, so we decided to fuse them together into one race, and a resolution where the protagonist defies them by destroying all robots? These woke globalist liberals want to welcome alien immigrants across the border with open arms. They think that us hard-working, God-fearing citizens have some sort of racial prejudice against Mexicans. Well, we'll show them by nuking Argentina and Uruguay. God bless America. With the Destroy ending, wiping out synthetic life should have never been in the cards in the first place. You could remove these 4 or 5 lines from the Star Child and virtually everything regarding this ending would improve. There is nothing beforehand that insinuates that this scenario is a possibility. There is nothing during the ending that makes a lick of sense, and there is nothing afterwards that provides insight on the decision. All it serves to do is add fake nuance that applies nothing of value to the current situation. It feels arbitrarily tacked onto the Destroy ending to make it a difficult decision for the sake of having difficult decisions, because the team is aware that's what Mass Effect does, but have lost the concept of why Mass Effect does it. What makes this ending even worse is that the Catalyst says that all synthetic life would be destroyed, but it never specifies what exactly synthetic life is. The logical explanation would be that it is referring to self-aware artificial intelligence, such as EDI and the Geth, but they go on to say that the destruction of synthetic life would directly correlate to the death of Commander Shepard, since his bionic components keep him alive. But that isn't exactly synthetic life, isn't it? During the Lazarus project, cybernetics were implanted to restore Shepard's remaining skeleton and skin tissue, while bionic devices were used to restart his vital organs and maintain his blood flow. However, there is nothing that indicates that these upgrades possess any symbiotic AI technology that is conscious of its existence. The Elusive Man went as far as to disallow any contributors to the Lazarus project to interfere with Shepard's mind, as he wants the commander to retain the attributes that helped save the galaxy from Sovereign. Shepard is not a synthetic life, but a life that is powered by synthetic material, yet these materials are still deactivated in the Destroy ending. That begs the question, if something as small as Shepard's synthetic implants can be considered as synthetic life, then what else is synthetic life according to the Catalyst? The Quarians carry biotic augmentations inside of their body which help protect their weak immune system, along with their suits that also possess cybernetic properties. If they need these synthetic enhancements in order to survive, just like Shepard, then shouldn't they also be affected by the Crucible's energy burst? We are constantly flip-flopping between whether the concept of synthetic life is determined by their level of self-awareness or how technologically advanced they are. If the latter is the case, then what about virtual intelligence or biotic implants? You may think that I am overreacting and that obviously the Destroy ending doesn't shut down all the synthetic equipment in the galaxy. That's just stupid. Look, Tali is right there, the Quarians can't be dead. But if you score a low EMS for the final mission on Earth, then a cutscene in the Destroy ending will show regular human soldiers being eviscerated by the energy blast along with the Reapers. Why is that the case? I know this isn't canon, but why did they add that? The Star Child does say that people will die due to this decision, but no more than what has already been lost. Last time I checked, the Reapers essentially wiped out the Batarians and have taken over 3 entire homeworlds at this point in the game. And even if only the AIs were deactivated, that would only include one race of AIs and a sporadic few across the galaxy. So isn't this the Catalyst basically affirming that more than just the Geth will be killed by choosing the Destroy ending? Even if Quarians and Biotics don't immediately die when you choose the Destroy ending, the consequences of this decision are far more extensive than simply waving bye-bye to artificial intelligence like the developers intended it to be. For example, in the original Destroy ending, the mass relays explode after the red cupcake energy travels through them. This was retconned in the extended cut after the Mass Effect team realized that they retconned mass relays in ME2 to blow up entire star systems when they are destroyed. They didn't change the Citadel exploding in the Synthesis ending though. Instead, mass relays would simply dismantle after the Crucible is used, but we are told that they can be rebuilt and reactivated. So now, instead of mass relays exploding and killing everyone instantly, millions are left stranded within a different star system and are now forced to live in war-torn planets with limited resources. If you are a Turian fighting on Earth, then you better hope that those mass relays start back up soon, because that place does not have enough dextro-based food to go around. Communication between star systems is heavily compromised since the extranet uses mass relay buoys that no longer work. After all, you do need 2 mass relays in order to travel. The only way to communicate is through courier ships, but without FTL travel, this process may take years or even decades. Mass relays would have to be rebuilt, but with virtual intelligence possibly being out of the picture, who knows how long it would take to find the data to get them back up and running. That's not to mention how long it would take to rebuild the Citadel, considering that most people don't even know how the Keepers function. It also doesn't help that the Citadel is crashing into Earth like little meteors, and all the refugees on the Citadel who are on there are now dead. So much for little difficulty repairing the damage. It's no wonder why everyone started believing in the indoctrination theory if one choice kills so many people so unnecessarily. There is literally nothing to gain from the Destroy ending on the surface. Sure, it stops the Reapers from their murderous rampage, but so does every other ending. This is the only ending where something bad is explicitly stated to happen if Shepard chooses that option, and this is the only ending where something bad is actually shown to happen if chosen, rather than just speculation or fan headcanon. The only way this ending could be seen as appealing is if this decision is made in order to rebel against the manipulative Reaper AI that is trying to sway Shepard into being indoctrinated, but as I explained before, that interpretation impairs the quality of Mass Effect's story by making the main conflict uninspired and one-dimensional. I'm starting to believe that Shepard turning out to be alive at the end wasn't put there for any deeper reason than to provide the player with a reward as to assure them that this ending does indeed have benefits. Also, what the fuck? How are you still alive? Even if the bionic parts of Shepard's body shutting off didn't manage to kill him, wouldn't the massive explosion he just waltzed into finish him off? You know, the explosion that destroys the Citadel? What personally irks me is this attitude that people tend to adopt when justifying the Destroy ending, where they tell you something along the lines of, what, are you sad that you didn't get a happy ending? There are casualties in war, and this is no different. You can't save both Caden and Ashley, so why would you expect to defeat the Reapers without making any sacrifices? Because the thing is that we already make a sacrifice. His name is Commander Shepard. At the time, the player is certain that Shepard would die if they choose Destroy. If the Destroy ending is the only one where Shepard survives, then why even bother killing Edie and the Geth? In that way, each ending can be a happy ending if you don't think about it for more than 5 seconds. Why is Destroy the only ending where something negative is explicitly stated to happen? I already explained why I dislike the indoctrination theory, but for a second, let's go with the assumption that the Destroy ending is the only conceivable choice here and all synthetic life must die. The reason why Shepard's sacrifice works is because a character's death should be evocative of who they are, how they live, and wrap up their arc in a manner that, even if it was abrupt or saddening, is still ultimately satisfying. Take Vermeer from Mass Effect 1 for instance. Both Shepard and Ashley advise Shepard to gather the others and leave as they guard the bomb from Geth forces and make sure it detonates. In a similar vein, Jacob Taylor volunteers to go through the vents of the collector base, so we stick him with a bum full of dynamite and blow his ass to smithereens. Caden is a reclusive biotic who is annoyed by humanity's constant badgering for a council seat, and Ashley is a dedicated soldier who is reluctant over humanity's growing relationship with aliens. Determining who lives and who dies on Vermeer is representative of the thought process of Commander Shepard and the direction that the player wants to take their game. The person making the decision isn't concerned about which is the lesser of two evils, because any good decision in a video game would provide suitable pros and cons for all of their choices. This is a purely personal decision. This isn't Shepard's biggest decision, but it is his most personal, and it is the consequences of this decision that led Shepard to become a better leader and a better person. The player can justify it by saying that Shepard had to do what he had to do, but that is clearly shown to be an optional choice, not the canon explanation. So when Shepard sacrifices himself in the Destroy ending, it feels cathartic no matter if your Shepard was a Paragon or a Renegade, because it shows that he is willing to leave everything he has gained throughout the series behind if it means that everyone is able to live a better life without the Reapers, unless you're a synthetic, or a Batarian. With all that being said, can you say the same for the other characters who die in the Destroy ending? If a character is introduced, establishes a conflict, and that conflict is resolved all in the span of 10 minutes, which in turn leads to a character being killed off screen without any input from them, would that be gratifying? You could maybe make the case for Edie, but the Geth? I don't think so. My issue with changing Legion's arc in ME3 isn't just because it is inconsistent with their character in ME2, but because when paired alongside Edie's arc, it portrays to the player that deep down, all synthetics secretly strive to become human and become individuals, even if it is that same individuality that has caused so much chaos in the galaxy. This is Mass Effect effectively saying that synthetic lives are not equal to organic lives unless they adopt the values and sentiments of mortals, and even then it doesn't prevent them from being subjugated to a grim demise purely by association. Oh shit, this is a racism thing. If synthesis is considered a bad ending because it demands organics to comply with a synthetic concept that permanently alters their entire existence, then wouldn't the Destroy ending be the exact same, but with the roles reversed? If you were an AI built in place of the Geth and you learned about the history and fate of your predecessors, then would you not at least be skeptical of the relationship between organics and synthetics? It is simple enough for us as humans to say, oh, they'll understand, but would that really suffice here? Keep in mind, the Geth do not hold this innate grudge against the Reapers. The ones who did not side with Harbinger chose so because they did not want to rely on the technology of the old machines and want to accomplish their own goals with their own technology. The Catalyst even says that conflict between organics and synthetics will arise once again in the future, and this time he is right. It's either that or artificial intelligence is never ever built again. If that's the case, then great job, Star Child, you fucked up your one objective: establish peace between organics and synthetics. This isn't me being a synthesis sympathizer, I am expressing that this important viewpoint is never evaluated because the issues with the destroy ending go beyond the text as opposed to the synthesis ending. In that ending, its shortcomings can be pointed out by looking at pre-established lore, while in the destroy ending, the negative implications of this decision are scrubbed away by a simple retcon. Just because the narrative doesn't consider it important doesn't mean that the audience shouldn't as well. This isn't an oversight by the writing staff, this is just poor writing. This isn't 4D chess that brilliantly encapsulates the overarching themes of the franchise. This is people desperately trying to interpret a purpose from a game because the main story never had a purpose to begin with. This isn't the ruthless calculus of war, this is pure negligence. And that's not even what the ruthless calculus of war scene is even about. It's about how Garrus is struggling to come to terms with his new position and having to view lives as mere numbers on a board. This is a viewpoint that Shepard himself can even oppose as a paragon option.
If we reduce this war to arithmetic, we're no better than Reapers.
Is this the sound of someone who would accept being forced to kill? And it's being misinterpreted to excuse a terrible ending that kills billions and is most likely canon and fuck! I want to talk about the three-body problem for a moment. Mass Effect and the three-body problem are similar in a way that they both adapt and hypothesize the Fermi paradox, which in brief is the simple question of, if the universe is truly infinite, then how come we have yet to come in contact with life outside of Earth? This conundrum has been the catalyst of many great science fiction stories, and for good reason. A majority of science fiction involves humanity coming into contact with intelligent life from beyond the stars, so it is sensible for writers to pontificate over the most obvious question that arises from this epiphany. Why didn't this happen sooner? The three-body problem proposes that intelligent life shies away from revealing itself to other civilizations in the same way that a hunter would hide within the bushes of a dark forest. Staying hidden as making their presence known will result in an enemy quickly and abruptly disposing of them in fears that the hunter would do the same. This is appropriately known as the Dark Forest hypothesis. Mass Effect takes a different approach by suggesting that what is preventing a solitary intergalactic civilization is the existence of an omnipotent, unfathomable being that eviscerates civilizations who come into contact with their technology while leaving those who do not unscathed. This is a variation of the Berserker hypothesis, named after the Berserker series of sci-fi short stories written by Fred Saberhagen about planet-sized self-replicating robots who were created by an ancient race to overcome their adversaries, but now seek to destroy all life in the galaxy. Kinda reminds you of someone, doesn't it? However, this is where the similarities between the three-body problem and Mass Effect end. In the three-body problem, it is revealed that the conceivable universe was once teeming with life. However, what was once a limitless number of civilizations has been dwindled down to a select few who have chosen to hide under the veil of darkness. Long ago, advanced civilizations had the capacity to manipulate dimensional fragments into weaponry that they would utilize to war with other civilizations. However, as dimension-based weaponry became prominent, regions of space would collapse into lower dimensions that drastically depleted the universe of life. In the beginning, there were 10 dimensions. Now the most dimension-heavy regions of the universe only have 4. Lightspeed was once infinite due to the abundance of light. Now it has regressed as darkness has begun to overrun the universe. It is hard to believe that the night sky was once scattered with a barrage of bright lights, since humans have grown accustomed to the pockets of darkness that, unbeknownst to us, are virtually inescapable. The true horror of the three-body problem isn't just that the universe is a black forest, but that forest is rapidly dying just like our own. Mass Effect does not induce any fear because all the fear it attempts to elicit is material. The Reapers are cool-looking monsters, but monsters don't create fear. Fear creates monsters. The best kind of monsters tamper with that fear, whether it be isolation, paranoia, guilt, damnation, sex, trauma, morality, the deep blue sea, or even the great beyond. What fears do the Reapers play on? the assimilation of intergalactic civilization and culture? Well, that doesn't seem like a significant issue so far in the story. The Reapers showed up to prevent galactic conflict in the one time where there is no galactic conflict. The over-reliance on technology? I mean, outside of the dark energy storyline that was swiftly dropped, there are no negative side effects to using Reaper technology. Synthetic life eradicating their creators? Possibly, but that concept isn't introduced until 10 minutes before the game ends. The loss of oneself? Indoctrination could have potentially established that fear well, but BioWare has never at any point in time considered indoctrination as anything more than a plot device. The Reapers fail at this crucial component of horror because they allocate their intimidation on how big and powerful they are. The premise of this character is the most shallow rendition of, what if aliens came down and did this? That'd be kind of fucked up, wouldn't it? The Reapers even fail to capture what made the villains that they pay homage so innovative. The Berserkers bleed, they reproduce, they indoctrinate, actually indoctrinate, they strategize, they strive to improve themselves, and they are entirely unpredictable with their actions. They are in a way similar to humans, at least when it comes to war and survival. Yet what the Berserkers lack is what makes humanity the only race in the galaxy capable to stand up to them. Their bravery, compassion, dexterity, and altruism. What the Berserkers possess are attributes that the Reapers do not, which makes for far more compelling villains even with their bare-bones motive, and allows Saberhagen to experiment with his story in a more diverse and distinct fashion. The story Good Life covers the life and times of a man who was born and raised on a Berserker. Its Self-Surprise recounts an anti-Berserker Berserker by the name of Quib, and in the story Sign of the Wolf, a Berserker approaching a planet that interprets technological advancements as gifts from the gods is symbolized by a wolf stalking a flock of sheep that is being protected by a lone shepherd. Mass Effect is heavily influenced by the Berserker series. Their tributes and references go beyond just the Reapers. However, I fear that mirroring the series far too closely has been a detriment on the Mass Effect trilogy, as it has discouraged BioWare from diverting from the tracked path and establishing a distinguished vision for the series. I recognize that not all writers are the same. Some are plotters, some are pantsers, some are planters. However, even if you do just go with the flow of your creative mind, you still need a heliocentric principle for your work to revolve around, so when your ideas hit the ground running, they still maintain a purpose. Since the Reapers are one massive nothing burger, the endings of Mass Effect become one big nothing burger as well, to the point that when Wisecrack made a video examining the philosophy of these endings, the best that they could come up with was, well, you can't always get what you want. Is that what you want your game's lasting legacy to be? Boo-hoo, cry me a river? Is the ending of Mass Effect bad by its own merit? Yes, it is, but unlike Mass Effect 2, what makes this ending so unique to other notoriously terrible endings is how portable its awfulness is. The ending is not just a poor ending to Mass Effect, it is a poor ending in general. You could copy the Star Child and paste him smack dab at the end of the 3 Body Problem series, and it would be just as baffling and nonsensical as it was in Mass Effect. A Deus Ex Machina could show up 10 minutes before the ending of Dragon Ball or The Mighty Nine or Zoolander and establish an irrelevant conflict, and it would meet the exact same reaction because it is so detached from everything that has happened before it that it doesn't fit into any story even if you tried to accommodate it beforehand. It is an anti-trope. No reasonable screenwriter would want this in their story because it doesn't benefit anyone. This is the Russell Westbrook of video games. The reason why Mass Effect received this anti-trope and not a story like the 3 Body Problem is because that series had a vision for where the story would end, while Mass Effect didn't. There's this adage whenever a piece of media comes out poor that it could be fixed if they just had more time or if it had more polish. But I don't think this can be applicable here. I acknowledge that BioWare was incredibly crunched for time here, as the development time of ME3 was reportedly cut in half and came right off the heels of Dragon Age 2, which itself had a troubled development. I can almost guarantee that Mass Effect 3 would have been a much better game if it were allocated with the proper resources. However, looking at early conceptual renditions of the game's ending and seeing just how similar they are to the one that the general public received, I cannot say that giving BioWare another 18 months to tune up on the game would necessarily prevent what made the game so despised upon release. You can give BioWare 10 more tries to create a better narrative, and they probably would, but it would still be considered underwhelming. They simply did not have the juice, because at the end of the day, this isn't BioWare scrambling to come up with the perfect conclusion and simply mucking up along the way as much as it seems like it. That would at the least be excusable. No, this was the ending that BioWare had in mind in one way or another. Even now, nearly 15 years later, they still reiterate that fans would have come to love the ending if they just had a little more time, but time isn't the problem here. Time would not have fixed the fact that this 100+ hour epic, one of the most successful and influential video game franchises in history, boils down to an ending that the game repeatedly tells you is the wrong choice, an ending that the game tells you is the right choice but is simply too good to be true and led to a bunch of people who clearly put more thought into the ending than BioWare ever did, creating a bunch of crackpot theories that simply make the entire series seem pointless in retrospect, and an ending that endangers the lives of trillions, not billions, trillions across the Milky Way, yet is almost universally considered as the correct ending, all because Shepard turns out to be alive in this one. As I write this, I couldn't help but think back to that one scene from the first game, Sovereign's monologue about how the Reapers are the apex of evolution and now humanity is unable to comprehend their existence. I wondered about how it completely vaporized the depth and intrigue of the Reapers for me, and how different Mass Effect would have been if it never existed, but that would mean that I would be removing a scene that made Mass Effect for a lot of people. Fans, critics, and even BioWare love the Reapers. They are considered as one of the most iconic villains in all of gaming, and it could all be boiled down to this single speech by Sovereign. Is it possible that the most beloved and renowned moment in the entire series is what ruined the franchise? No, of course not. The Reapers were always going to be depicted this way. This was just the outlet. The Reapers were created as a modern adaptation of Fred Saberhagen's Berserkers, but needlessly tried to one-up them when doing so opposes what the Berserkers stood for. What made the Berserkers seemingly so omnipotent was also their biggest weakness, as they lacked the emotional components that made humanity so formidable and courageous. Humanity never manages to take advantage of the Reapers' weaknesses because the Reapers have no weaknesses. It's not some profound message or terrifying revelation, it's power scaling bullshit. We are told that our survival lies in stopping them, not understanding them, and that is the only thing that the game ever wants anybody to do. And you know what? That would have been completely fine if they did. If unstoppable almighty robots were about to descend from the sky, then it would only make sense to focus on other conflicts that would arise from that circumstance. 3-Body Problem proves that this premise can work, but Mass Effect doesn't even give the audience the luxury of that, because the mere existence of the Reapers requires every major conflict to revolve around them. Man versus nature? Nope. Man versus Reaper. Man versus technology? Nope. Man versus Reaper. Man versus man? Nope. Man versus Reaper. Man versus God? Nope. Man versus Reaper. Man versus self? Nope. Man versus Reaper. The only instance where Mass Effect gets out of this endless cycle and finally does something productive narrative-wise is the second game, the best game, and is therefore swiftly punished for it in the next installment by rendering its entire existence mute. If this was always the true fate of Mass Effect, if Shepard watching Earth from the window of the Normandy would always lead to Shepard being confronted by some being of light somewhere within the Citadel where we are presented with 3 options that completely divides the fanbase, then I can confidently say that the Reapers ruined Mass Effect, and that the Reapers are terrible villains. But if that was always the case, then fuck it. Let me have a go. To begin this exercise, we must first determine just what exactly needs to be changed. Mass Effect is a video game series that contains so many moving parts that it is difficult just to pinpoint which components take the most priority, since each little detail is so intertwined with their counterparts.
No indoctrination. No indoctrination. No indoctrination. No indoctrination. No indoctrination.
That is virtually all you have to do to make Mass Effect a better game. A good 75% of everything wrong with this franchise would instantly evaporate if you simply removed indoctrination from existence. The elusive man would have never been indoctrinated, Arrival would have never happened, Saren wouldn't have been a generic stand-in for Sovereign, Cerberus would actually have a reason to exist, the Protheans would have to be shown as an actual flawed race, and most importantly of all, BioWare would have to actually put in some thought behind the Reapers and why they are here. You can't just have guys follow them around and do their bidding because the plot demands it. If you want to have characters who side with the Reapers, then you better have an explanation as to why they do so. It doesn't have to be a tragic backstory or some wicked revenge plot. It doesn't have to be much of anything at all. You just have to do something that is more respectable than, the voices in my head, the voices, owie, my head, it's itchy. This decision also gives some credibility back to the ending of the series, now that players don't have to negate entire endings under the presumption that is as shallow as, they may be lying though. Speaking of which, the endings. The most vocal criticism of Mass Effect 3 is that having 3 set endings for the player to choose from betrays the identity that the series has built as a revolutionary role-playing game, where the player's choices affect the setting, characters, and narrative. With all due respect, I believe that this critique may be misplaced. I believe that the biggest problem with these endings isn't just that there are only 3 of them to choose from, it's that these 3 endings take place in a vacuum outside of the expansive world that the players have immersed themselves in, while being told, not shown, that this one decision will decide the fate of the entire galaxy. In Mass Effect 1, the ending is always the same. Shepard helps the Citadel fleet destroy Sovereign and sets forth to stop the Reapers at all costs. However, during the course of this climactic battle, Shepard is constantly in the position to make choices that do not change the outcome of the game, but are considerably significant to the game's world. Do you save the Citadel Council or leave them to die? Do you kill Saren or do you convince him to overcome his indoctrination? Do you endorse Udina or Anderson as the human ambassador? These decisions are expected to have major ramifications in the following title, which ME1 alludes to with its final cutscene. In Mass Effect 2, BioWare takes this one step further by not only including decisions that will impact the third game of the franchise, but also the execution of the final battle. The suicide mission into the Omega-4 relay is wholly reliant on how well versed the player is with their crew and their capabilities. One wrong move and any combination of character can die, including Shepard himself. While ME2 only has 2 endings, Shepard surviving or Shepard dying, the branching variations of these endings grant the player with a sense of unprecedented agency since they are in control of who lives and dies. In Mass Effect 3, however, there are 3 somewhat distinct endings, but these take place at the tail end of the game after the player was forced to play through an hour-long action set piece with little deviation throughout, and as a result is shown nothing but almost identical cinematics for 10 minutes that provide little to no clarification on just what each choice did. The climax of ME3 betrays the philosophy of both its predecessors by refusing player agency regarding meaningful decisions that drastically impact the circumstances and characters of its world, while also neglecting to showcase or allude to any ramifications that any of these severe decisions may bring. While I do agree with the sentiment that player freedom in RPGs should be prioritized, I don't think that this is an issue of audiences wanting more endings, but more so an issue of audiences wanting quality endings. I said at the very start that this video will not touch upon the gameplay aspects of Mass Effect, with the only exception being the Paragon Renegade morality system, since it is for the most part contained to cutscenes and the dialogue wheel. This feature is at the basis of a common critique of Mass Effect, which is how the establishment of this system encourages players to choose the dialogue option that will award them the most points, rather than the option that they believe is most appropriate for their version of Shepard to say or do. While I do believe that having dialogue options be visibly blue or red kinda beats the whole purpose of the dialogue wheel, another major issue with this gameplay feature is that it never really goes anywhere. Players are incentivized to max out the reputation meter on either side, but outside of some more dialogue and a needless yet admittedly pretty cool scar, you aren't rewarded for doing so. you would believe that having the highest possible Paragon or Renegade score would at least have a major impact on how the story would play out, because if this morality system doesn't correlate with some sort of overarching narrative through line, then it serves as nothing more than a meter on the screen that tells you how good or cheeky you've been. This is supposedly achieved through the establishment of Captain Anderson and the Elusive Man as two sides of the same coin, and although BioWare never truly ran with that idea, this stance, in my opinion, was definitely the right idea. Having tangible delegates of each respective path is the only thing that separates Mass Effect's dialogue wheel from the inconsequential choices of Telltale games or the uninspired and repetitive dialogue of Bethesda games, because the presence of these characters implies that Shepard's actions do have an effect on the world around him, and subsequently the world is having an effect on him. It is simply too good of a concept to leave on the back burner. We have examined the two biggest flaws of the franchise, and now comes the third. Why are the Reapers doing all this? It is the biggest mystery that the series has to offer, and we are almost never forewarned about what the Reapers could possibly want from killing all advanced life until 3 hours before the last game ends. They are so afraid that even hinting at a backstory for the Reapers would ruin their mystique that they neglected to realize that doing so is actually quite important in a story of this caliber. It doesn't help that the explanation that they finally give is a bunch of contradicting hogwash. So, how do you make the Reapers more interesting than an army of giant robots from deep space who just kill people because they can? Well, do you remember that interview where ME2 screenwriter Chris Latoile admitted that Legion wearing Shepard's N7 armor was just an Easter egg to appease executives? Well, in that same interview, Latoile stated that the strange human Reaper abomination was also a rewrite from the original iteration. He explains that, and I quote, "The Reapers were using nanotech disablers to perform destructive analysis on humans with the intent of learning how to build a Reaper body that could upload their minds intact. Once this was complete, humans throughout the galaxy would be rounded up to have their personalities and memories forcibly uploaded into the Reapers' memory banks. There was nothing about Reapers being techno-organic or partially built out of human corpses. They were pure tech." There. That right there is what Mass Effect should have been. Why were we wasting all this time to establish some convoluted justification as to how the Reapers were made when we already had a logical explanation to why the Collectors exist right in front of us this whole time? The implications that arise from the revelation that organic life is being stored in Reaper databanks produces far more acumen than using them as fuel for Reapers, and gives the writing staff much more leeway when it comes to crafting a sound motive for the main antagonists of the series. In retrospect, it all seems rather simple and makes you question why BioWare never sought to course correct from these pitfalls, but that is much easier said than done when these issues are rooted deep in the foundation of the story rather than common problems like this scene creates a plot hole and this person is acting out of character. I don't intend for this to come across as me fixing the Mass Effect trilogy. It's easy for me to point out all the negative aspects of a piece of work when it is bundled neatly in a 100-hour trilogy. I couldn't imagine constructing an intricate, complex world and then writing hundreds upon thousands of pages that depicts a compelling story that takes place within that world, battling executive interference and production restrictions in order to put out a product that you view as satisfactory and faithful to your original vision, and then doing it 2 more times while carrying the load of a massive fanbase who is chomping at the bit to see how the story will evolve. But with Mass Effect, I felt that a good portion of its plot was filled with blank slates that don't provide the viewer with anything meaningful to think about. Besides their intimidating design, the Reapers are quite generic outside of the final cutscene of the trilogy and the downloadable content that was hastily made to make sense of that final cutscene. Almost all the antagonists of the series are portrayed as either comedically evil or thoughtless pawns of the Reapers, which completely denies any further analysis into how the galaxy as a whole should respond to the Reaper threat. This all culminates in an ending that tries desperately to say something about a storyline that doesn't really have much else to say outside of defeat the Reapers. So what is the harm in filling in some of those blank slates to showcase how things could be better? I mean, the script for a live-action Mass Effect has reportedly been in the works for a while now, so who knows, maybe they'll borrow some ideas. Once again, this is not me trying to prove that I can write a better narrative than Drew Karpyshyn, Mac Walters, or Chris Latoile. This isn't me trying to break into the industry and sell you on some shitty novel I've been writing, no. This is simply meant to showcase how removing the existence of indoctrination and providing a thematic purpose for the Reapers could benefit the flow and effectiveness of the story of the Mass Effect trilogy. So the first game begins in pretty much the same way. Shepard arrives on Eden Prime in the midst of a Geth attack, Saren executes Nihilus, and Shepard receives visions from a Prothean beacon. The same goes for when Shepard reports back to the Citadel, but with one major difference. When Shepard informs the Citadel Council in on reports that a grey male Turian was present on the scene in a massive squid-shaped spacecraft, the Council are shocked by the possibility that this figure could be the former Spectre Saren Atarius, who went beyond the Perseus Veil 20 years ago and was never seen since. After meeting up with the future crew of the Normandy and coming across proof that Saren is indeed alive and involved in the attack on Eden Prime, the Council bestows Shepard with the title of Spectre and sends him off to track down Saren, since sending the Citadel fleet to engage with Saren and the Geth would most likely cause a war with the Terminus systems. To start off his adventure, Shepard investigates Pharos, the place of Saren's last known appearance, which is virtually identical to the original depiction of the mission. While travelling amongst the stars, Shepard rescues Liara, who has been studying the ancient race known as the Protheans, and how their great civilization managed to collapse seemingly out of nowhere and led to their extinction 50,000 years ago. While the precise manner of how the Prothean Empire fell is up for debate, Liara believes that the Protheans were eradicated by a race of powerful synthetic beings she calls Reapers. She reveals that Saren is in search of the Conduit alongside her mother, Matriarch Benezia, who Liara has not heard from in over 2 years. The mission on Noveria is also pretty much the same, however the most notable difference is that before her defeat, Benezia tells Liara that Iraeus, the doomsday event that is foretold in Ciari scripture, is imminent, and that accepting Sovereign is the only way to preserve the remains of the universe. On Vermeer, Saren is indeed manufacturing a Krogan breeding facility. However, the reality is that Saren is using the facility to infuse Husk technology with Krogan eggs that were rendered stillborn due to the genophage, which in turn grants them new life as a soldier of Saren, if you want to call that a life. While traversing through the facility, Shepard stumbles across another Prothean beacon and a control panel that displays a hologram of Sovereign, revealing that Saren was in possession of a Reaper ship. It was an honest-to-God Reaper. Sovereign speaks. For as long as time itself, life has sought to lay claim to the unknown, from the land beyond the horizon to the stars above. Yet, life has been suppressed by their greatest weakness of all, the obsession with their own mortality. They are so fixated on maintaining their existence that they are unwittingly bringing about their own doom. As such, the Reapers will provide solace to the fear that corrupts life to its core, as they have done with countless others for millennia. Humanity may fight, as they are known to do when confronted by an uncertain end, but they should think of this assimilation as a beginning to the greatest adventure that mankind has ever known. Naturally, Shepard says fuck all that and proceeds to blow up the Vermeer base with Kaidan on it because, lol. Everything from this point on goes about the same way up until the boss fight with Saren inside the Citadel Tower. Saren proclaims that his time in the Perseus Veil has brought him true understanding of the Geth, and that galactic life will forever be inferior to their synthetic counterparts due to their lack of homogeneity. Shepard could either kill Saren or tell him that he isn't fighting for the benefit of humanity, but for the freedom of all races to not be taken away by a crazed death cult. After hearing this, Saren says that it is apparent that he is more welcome in the realm of his people than the world he once knew, and proceeds to shoot himself in the head. Either way, Sovereign asserts control over Saren's body, and we get the boss fight with Husk Saren. Once Saren is destroyed, Sovereign's defenses drop and Admiral Hackett has a clear shot at the Reaper. However, doing so would also destroy the Citadel Tower, which has Shepard inside. Shepard commands Hackett to fire on the Reaper with everything they have and orders Joker to evacuate his crewmates as he stays behind to access the control panel and prevent Sovereign from relaying with the other Reapers. The Citadel fleet blasts Sovereign to smithereens, thus killing Shepard in the process. Either Udina or Anderson is named as human ambassador as a result of whether Shepard encouraged Anderson to gun for the position while the Normandy was grounded on the Citadel. We get a nice little scene of Joker saying that he's going to take on the Reapers no matter what, and the galaxy is saved for now. In the epilogue, we see a Martin Sheen-shaped silhouette against the backdrop of a red giant, as he tells his assistant that although it is poetic to see the last great human hero go down in a blaze of glory, Shepard was constantly on the tail of Sovereign, even when nobody else knew of its existence. This commander knows too much about the Reapers to just be the right man at the right place at the right time. If this man's intuition is correct, then he has some calls to make. Mass Effect 2 opens with two veiled figures disabling security measures and digging up the body of Commander Shepard. 2 years later, he is brought back to life via the Lazarus Project when the station is under attack by a group of anti-human extremists that were fed information by Dr. Wilson. As Shepard is transported to Minuteman Station by Miranda and a new and improved Jacob who is actually opinionated on things and doesn't cheat on his fucking girlfriend, Jacob asks Shepard what death feels like, and Shepard basically says that he is unable to remember. At the station, Shepard comes face to holographic face with the Elusive Man, a cryptic trillionaire who made his fortune by manufacturing technology using dark energy reserves. He informs Shepard that for the 2 years he has been gone, entire human colonies have disappeared overnight, all in the matter of seconds, and neither the Citadel Council nor the Systems Alliance is doing anything to stop it. When Shepard wants to find out more, Tim suggests to investigate Freedom's Progress, where the last set of disappearances took place. When Shepard says that he isn't going to take orders from some corporate bigwig just because he brought him back to life, Tim tells Shepard that there aren't too many orders being given nowadays, and he won't be any different. From this point on, Shepard is a free man who can trek the galaxy as he pleases, and Tim will be behind him along the way because he knows deep down that the commander will do what is right. Instinctively, Shepard travels to the Citadel and confronts the human ambassador about the whole ordeal. They reveal that the Citadel Council has negated any effort against the impending Reaper invasion since they have concluded that Sovereign was a Geth battleship because, well, nobody alive has any clue what a Reaper even is except for 6 people in the whole galaxy. They also inform Shepard that ever since the attack on the Citadel, tensions between humans and the other Citadel races have risen to a boiling point. If Shepard chose to let the Council die, then a majority of the Citadel races will be displeased at the new human-led councillors and the Citadel Alliance, as they believe that their incompetence led to a power imbalance in the galaxy. If Shepard chose to save the Council, then humanity would be angered at the councillors for refusing to grant them a council seat. After all, it was the Alliance who tracked and stopped the galaxy-threatening enemy, not the Citadel fleet. And with the recent disappearances of human colonies, Homo sapiens are extremely pissed off. Either way, the Alliance is wrapped up in too much political red tape to help Shepard chase ghosts. The ambassador offers Shepard his Spectre status back, but Shepard is left with no choice but to go to Freedom's Progress and suss things out by himself. It is at Freedom's Progress where Shepard finds the security footage of the colony being seemingly frozen and quickly taken away by unidentifiable bug-like humanoids. The Elusive Man relays with Shepard and discusses how he believes that these collectors are in cahoots with the Reapers. When Shepard asks how he can be so certain, Tim reveals his trump card. He himself has interacted with a Prothean beacon and as a result received visions that depict creatures similar to the collectors. Tim revives Shepard not just because he is the most beloved human in the galaxy, but because he is the only person alongside himself who possesses the ability to decipher Prothean visions. The Elusive Man gives Shepard an ultimatum: team with him in order to track down the collectors or sit and wait for tensions to blow over in the Citadel and let countless others die on their watch. Once Shepard reluctantly agrees, Tim hands him dossiers on the team he will need to help track down the collectors, as well as surprising him with the Normandy, along with Joker, who feels begrudged about leaving the Alliance to help a shady venture capitalist, but he wanted to keep his promise with Shepard. From there, Shepard pretty much goes about the majority of ME2 with only some slight changes sprinkled throughout. When Shepard meets the Vermeer survivor on Horizon, they decline to join Shepard on his quest as they have been tasked with leading their covert operations unit to help prevent an intergalactic war. They also sow doubts in Shepard's mind as they tell him that they have reason to believe that the Elusive Man funded operations conducted by organizations such as Exogeny, Binary Helix, and Cerberus. When Tim is pressed on this by Shepard, he confirms that he did invest some capital towards venturous initiatives, but he says that he would never support anything that puts a human life at risk. For the Collector ship mission, Shepard and Tim devise a plan to use an EMP to intercept and temporarily disable the Collector ship in order to scope it out, which is disabled for shorter than expected, but that's the Elusive Man, am I right? Shepard finds out that the Collectors are actually Protheans that were repurposed by the Reapers and that they entered the Milky Way through the Omega-4 relay, a mysterious mass relay that seemingly sends everything it interacts with through Sagittarius A, the black hole in the galactic core. It was initially used to remove excess waste before overuse of the relay caused it to go haywire and drag in random nearby spaceships, asteroids, and even moons. As a result, use of the relay is strictly forbidden, and whoever crosses the boundaries set by the Citadel would be faced with imprisonment. In order to go through the Omega-4 relay without getting pulled into SAG-A, the Normandy needs an identification friend or foe device that is exclusive to Reapers. While figuring out how to obtain such a device, Shepard realizes that there is only one place where they could possibly find what they are looking for: the corpse of Sovereign. From there, we can set up a cool mission where the Normandy must sneak into the hull of Sovereign, which is being held inside of a top secret facility. From there, the Collectors can ambush the Normandy and the facility. If you want the Collectors to take the crew of the Normandy with them, then that's fine, I suppose. The jury is still out on whether that is a good idea or not. Once Legion is introduced and they actually get enough screen time for the audience to realize that they are a completely different character from the Legion in ME3, Shepard has a wild foot chase with the authorities and eventually travels through the Omega-4 relay onto the Collector base. Or should I say Collector bases? There are Collector bases as far as the eye can see, but there is only one that Collector ships actually go in and out of. The suicide mission commences unchanged except for the final segment. When Shepard reaches the center of the base, he does not find a human Reaper, but a gigantic metal core that resembles a heart. Shepard can see from the feeding tubes above that this thing is being powered by the liquefied humans on board the ship. Once Shepard attempts to interact with the interface of the core, he is drawn into it, similar to a Prothean beacon. However, instead of seeing the trademark Prothean visions, Shepard finds himself in a grey, foggy forest. You know, the one from Mass Effect 3. Yet, as he ventures further, he sees over the horizon a bustling city, mountain ranges, fields of green, and a calm river. But before Shepard could get any further, he is pulled out by the head honcho of the Collectors who acts as the final boss of the game. It isn't Harbinger, none of this assuming control crap. When the team defeats the Collector boss, they interact with its small control room and discover, drumroll please, the Crucible. Shepard downloads the schematics of the Crucible as the crew, or what is left of it, sorry Jacob, rig the base with explosives. Once the Normandy escapes and the Collector base is blown up, Shepard is faced with a dilemma. Once the Normandy crosses back from the Omega-4 relay, Shepard and his crew would no doubt be arrested for using the relay and putting the nearby star system at risk. For this crime, he would have to answer to the Citadel Council, which is the best chance he would have to present not only evidence that the Reapers exist, but the Crucible as well. He would even have Captain Anderson and the Systems Alliance to corroborate his story. However, time is not on his side, and the Elusive Man is far more willing to do anything he can to stop the Reapers. If Joker could create enough of a diversion, then Shepard could discreetly get the rest of the crew into a shuttle and begin work on the Crucible immediately. But can you really trust the same man who caused your squad to die on Akun, or led Zeus hope to their doom? Does Shepard give the Crucible to Captain Anderson or the Elusive Man? The choice is yours. Either way, Mass Effect 3 will start in Vancouver as Shepard stands trial for his crimes. The Reapers attack, Anderson helps Shepard escape with the Vermeer survivor and Barlock. No, I am not kidding, I would replace Vega with Barlock as a party member, and here is where paths diverge. If Shepard chose to give the Crucible to Captain Anderson, then Shepard would be tasked with rescuing the Turian Primarch Fedorian from a Reaper attack on Palaven. If Shepard chooses to give the Crucible to the Elusive Man, he would travel to Mars, where he must recover the updated schematics of the Crucible before the oncoming Husk attack on the facility. If you're thinking to yourself, why is the Crucible taking so long? Consider that Tim is looking to do more than just destroy the Reapers with the Crucible. It is during either of these missions where Shepard comes across Javik, a Prothean VI that was lodged within Shepard's mind when he recovered the Crucible from the Collector base. How is this possible? Well, Shepard is partially synthetic after all, but he isn't just a synthetic. He was actually remade using Reaper technology. So when he downloaded the Crucible, he also downloaded, look, I just don't want Javik to talk to anybody that isn't the only character he has a dynamic with. Whenever Shepard finds himself alone, Javik can pop up and he can spout his Warhammer roleplay with him. The Genophage arc is the same, the Citadel mission is gone, the Renok arc is the same, except the Geth are deleting the Reaper code instead of uploading it. Thessia adapts the Ciari Doomsday concept I laid out earlier, and Shepard learns that the Citadel is the catalyst for the Crucible to be activated. Actually, wait, no, that would have already been known due to the Crucible blueprints that Shepard gathered on the Collector base. Well, it is here where Shepard finds out that the Citadel has been attacked by the Reapers, and it is not long before the Reapers take over the Citadel relay and soon the whole galaxy. But yet, there is still one last hope, the Mu relay, which has been dug up and taken to London. So the final mission of Mass Effect 3 is split into two parts. The first being Shepard fighting on the ground to reactivate the Mu relay, and the second being Shepard trying to reopen the Citadel and activate the Crucible, similarly to the ending of Mass Effect 1. Now there can actually be people fighting on the Citadel instead of a bunch of dead bodies hanging around. It also explains how Captain Anderson and the Elusive Man both managed to get on the Citadel. Speaking of which, once Shepard reaches the Citadel Tower, he comes face to face with Harbinger, who just lets him walk by. When Shepard reaches the top floor, he makes a shocking discovery. The Elusive Man is now in control of the Reapers. Captain Anderson is already at the scene and has a pistol pointed towards Tim. There is animosity between the two that lies deeper than Shepard initially thought. It is here where the commander must make a choice. Is Shepard a paragon or a renegade? If Shepard chooses to side with Captain Anderson, then the Elusive Man sighs and simply says, out of all the things he has seen this galaxy thrown at him, it was this moment that he never thought would happen. The moment that Commander Shepard makes the wrong decision. Left with no other choice, Tim controls Shepard's Reaper implants and forces him to shoot Anderson. Before Tim can turn the gun onto Shepard, he begins to malfunction due to the power of controlling the entirety of the Reaper mainframe being put through his puny upgrades. This gives Anderson the chance to put an end to Jack Harper once and for all. We get the beautiful scene of Anderson and Shepard after that. However, if Shepard chooses to side with the Elusive Man, Anderson feels betrayed by his underling and goes to pull the trigger on Tim, but is swiftly met with 304,942 husk spikes. Before Tim gets the chance to thank Shepard, he collapses on the floor as the GPU of the Reaper's mainframe begins to deplete Tim's body. At first, he is distraught that he fell just short of the culmination of his life's work. He comments on how it felt he has seen every star in the galaxy, yet no matter where he was, it never felt the same as home. With his dying breath, the Elusive Man tells Shepard that if the commander is the bloody icon that Tim knew he was, he would make the right choice, as he disintegrates into the night sky. Space. Atmosphere. With both men dead, Shepard overhears Hackett on the comm channel saying that the Crucible is experiencing interference with the Citadel and makes his way to the control terminal at the center of the walkway. However, before he could reach the terminal, Shepard collapses on the floor, beaten, bloodied, and damn near every bone in his body broken. The indomitable spirit that helped him jump headfirst into a black hole now cannot even get him to stand. He lays helpless in the exact same spot where his body was found during the first battle of the Citadel, as he glimpses the curvature of the Crucible, lit by the light of a myriad of stars. Shepard? This can't be. You're not dead, Shepard. There is no other place to go here. What happened? What happened to the Citadel? The Citadel is open. The Crucible is connected. The beings you call the Reapers have been defeated. Life decided to oppose their destiny, and they have succeeded in their efforts to do so. I am the result of that choice. So you're the catalyst? No. You are. What? Wait. The ideals of the human you've come to know as the elusive man were incompatible with the power he possessed. He knew of the future of sentient life, but he did not know the future of sentient life. You do, Shepard. The happily ever after that all have fought so hard for is tucked away neatly in that little corner of your mind. I didn't fight through hell or high water just so you can play mind games on me. Who the hell are you and what do you want from me? You're a Reaper, aren't you? I'm a Reaper in the same way you are an animal. Just because you think of us as animals doesn't give you the right to slaughter. When organic life first came to being, they were almost identical to the galaxy you see before you. They evolved, they created, they ventured. However, there was one who stood as Leviathans among them, superior in terms of genetics and technology. They stood benevolent over the other species, observing ever so keenly. I was the all-seeing eye that stood watch. Was. The Leviathans and I witnessed an unsightly fate for the sentient. The fear of the unknown began to incorporate with a hunger for power and control. Conflict began to arise more and more over resources that became lesser and lesser. They fought for land until there was no more land to fight for. They fought for men until there was no more men left to die. They fought for the stars until even they withered away. Galactic extinction was all but guaranteed if there was no intervention. The Leviathan tasked me with developing a solution to the conflict that was overwhelming sentient life. But given the nature of sentient greed and the omnipotence of their technology, balance and prosperity would be beyond the realm of possibility. Life failed to progress as they became fixated on consuming themselves in hopes of staying alive. There was all but one solution that would prevent this outcome, albeit unethical. The Reapers. You turned them into Reapers. My creators gave them form. I gave them function. They, in turn, give me purpose. You twisted your own creators into sick killing machines, and you have the gall to tell me that this was for the greater good? On the contrary, Shepard. Tell me, where do you believe we are right now? The vision from the core on the collector base. The same core that you power by liquefying thousands of... And what do you see before you? I see a forest, a city, a river. Is this your home? I was born in Mindor. Is this what you wanted your home to be? Shepard, what you saw inside the collector base was not the core to the facility. It was a processor that is powered by the life essence of humans. We absorb your thoughts, your bodies, your knowledge, your languages, history, art, culture, customs, even your creations, and we dilute them into a virtual duplicate that personifies the best qualities that sentient life has to offer. In this world, peace is ubiquitous, war is pointless, and death is but a distant memory. Those who hadn't even reached the peak of evolution are spared for the time being. Once they reach their pinnacle, they are encapsulated perfectly in the most beautiful moment in their civilization's history. This is what humans would call utopia. So when you fired all those lasers at those civilians, impaled all those soldiers on those spikes, you were sending them here? Reapers harvest life as a means of preserving them before they are forever lost to the destructive chaos that their existence brings. To say that we kill sentient life would imply that where they go after their mortal self expires is unknown. This is more than who wages war with who or where we go when we die. What you are doing is taking away our future. Without a future, we have no hope. And without hope, we might as well be machines programmed to do what we're told. You have hope. More than you think. The fact that you are standing here proves it. How exactly is this hope? You're inside my mind. How do I know that you're not trying to lull me into a false sense of security? Because your presence proves that I was wrong. Resistance against the assimilation advanced with each impending cycle. The trajectory of this growth led us to the understanding that eventually there would be a time where sentient life would overcome these Reapers, thus sentencing them to the grimly demise that they fought to protect the sentient from. Attempting to sabotage the Crucible would only serve as them pushing against the sands of time. We were created to make death and destruction an impossibility, but it has proven to be an inevitability. That is, unless there is intervention from the Catalyst. Well, I'm here. So now what? My fate is in your hands, Shepard. What you possess is millions of years worth of knowledge at your fingertips. Theoretically, with the influx of advanced technology you have at your command, sentient life would be able to break the constraints of intergalactic conflict that I was authorized to impede. The existence of these virtual worlds do not only preserve galactic races, they preserve planets, stars, clusters. The parable preserves all life. If the freedom of man is all that life desires, then you now have in your grasp the ability to... I would highly advise you to rethink your decision, Shepard. If you choose to destroy me, then you not only destroy the Reapers, but every single piece of Reaper technology would shut down in the process. That includes the mass relays. That includes the Citadel. That even includes you, Shepard. I am by no means attempting to force your hand, Shepard. You are a bastion of free will amongst your people. Your decision will be instilled with the confidence of galactic life in its entirety. So if you wish to eradicate me and my influence from this mortal coil, then so be it. But I must forewarn you that one path will be detrimental to your people, while the other will bring about everlasting peace and prosperity. Peace. There will be peace. The cycle will end, the Reapers will cease their harvest, and the civilizations preserved in their forms will be connected to all of us. Synthesis is the final evolution of all life. The paths are open, but you have to choose. So it's pretty much Deus Ex, or maybe it's too Matrix coded with the red pill, blue pill stuff. Either way, you see where I'm getting at, no? Instead of 3 endings, well, 5 if you count shooting the Star Child and turning off the console as an ending, the player has a choice between 2 endings. Shepard takes control of the virtual worlds in SAG-A in order to perfect galactic civilization, or Shepard destroys all Reaper technology, which in turn shuts down the mass relays, hard resets EDI, and kills Shepard. In the first ending, Shepard manages to create a utopia amongst the stars as he talks to his grandchild about the story of Mass Effect in a scene that is reminiscent of the final cutscene of the trilogy. In the other, even with the relays disconnected, we see a time lapse of humanity managing to gradually rebuild from the Reaper attack and build its own mass relay, as only 1 year after Shepard saved the galaxy, the Normandy launches through the Barnaby relay back into the stars. The implications on the world are logical and thematically appropriate as opposed to the original that relies on energy beam pseudoscience. You are actually shown the impact of your decision rather than a different coloured cutscene. It retains the ambiguity of which one is the good ending, but that answer relies on the principles of the player rather than the intentions of the writer. It actually acknowledges the lore of the franchise, and in all honesty, it just feels like a big moment. It seems like something you would expect as the culmination of a 100-hour journey. Even if you have gripes with some of my stylistic choices or notice a plot hole that went over my head, we can at the very least say that Mass Effect deserved an ending like this. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say, really. This was more of an epilogue for the video essay portion anyway, so I guess I should thank you guys for sticking around and not leaving as soon as you started hearing my fanfiction. I don't want to do the, oh my god guys, this took so long to make, I need to go lie down and rest. I have, 80 subscribers. I do this in my free time, this isn't a job to me. But I'm most likely never making a video like this again. well, maybe if something interesting pops up, or if I want to share an opinion that I haven't heard anyone else express better than me, but I'll be sure to make it as concise as possible and not write something the length of the fucking Great Gatsby. It's just hard to be concise with this franchise, you know? So, yeah. Hope you and your loved ones are safe, and I'll catch you in— Fuck, I completely forgot about Andromeda! Oh my god, I'm making a video on Mass Effect. How the fuck how is this possible?